Hello, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are tuning in from. My name is Mel, and I will be your host for today's Machine Learning Day. We have a great day planned for you guys with three very insightful talks. Just before we start, let me go over some service information. And as some of you may know, already know, we have a chat feature here. So we encourage you to really talk to each other, ask questions, and communicate, but also please be respectful and follow our code of conduct. So here is a short reminder. Perfect. So before we dive into the Machine Learning Day, I would like to say that if you like our live days program, I'm sure that you would love our World Congress. So please make sure to visit worldcongress.dev and secure your tickets for this July in Berlin until it's not too late. So I think we have everything covered before we can start with our program. And our first talk is really amazing. It's called Creating Industry-Ready Solutions with LLM Models. And it actually has two speakers, Vijay and Gauravdeep. They are actually founder and senior software engineer at Think Future Technologies. And they are joining me on the stage right now. Please welcome them. Hello, guys, and good afternoon for you, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Mel. It's such a pleasure being here. So thank you for inviting us. Very excited to speak here.
Of course, we are also really glad to have you on our live stage. And yeah, may I ask for maybe a really short introduction on what can we expect from your talk today?
Yeah, so Mel, we represent a company which is about 16 years old, and I myself have been a product entrepreneur. Of late, we have been using combinatorial innovation, and what we want to do today is show how we have leveraged LLM for some of the industry-wide use cases. And then Gaurav, who's a senior data scientist at Think Future Technologies, will dive deeper and may also do hands-on for a couple of use cases.
Okay, perfect. So we will get two different views.
Yes.
Perfect. Then I wish you guys a lot of fun and see you later for the Q&A session.
Thank you, Mel. Is my screen visible to all? Mel, is it visible to everybody?
Yes, it's visible.
All right. Yeah. So thank you. I'll get started. Again, I'm Vijay, and we would like to present with this topic, creating industry-ready solutions with LLMs. With me is Gaurav, as I just mentioned. So this is the overview of what we're going to do today, a brief overview. So we're going to kind of talk a bit about LLMs. We're going to talk about LLMs in industry. We'll do some demos, and then I'll hand it over to Gauravdeep to look at challenges with LLMs and dive deeper. All right. So before I get into what is LLM, right, I would like to go back a century, actually 120 years back, when airplane came into practical use. At that time, people were trying to find the value, the benefits of an aeroplane, and mail delivery, and airplane racing were a couple of things that people thought about. No one thought about that aeroplane will lead to creation of nuclear power plant. And you will be surprised that how can aeroplane be linked to a nuclear power plant? Well, the way it is aeroplane allowed US Army to deliver aerial bombs. And aerial bombs allowed the Air Force to deliver nuclear bombs. And nuclear bombs is what allowed peaceful uses of nuclear energy, which is a nuclear power plant. So the bottom line is you never know when a small, a small discovery, an invention can open up a lot of doors for newer and bigger things. Coming to LLM, as you all know, is large language model. It's large because of number of parameters. Parameters are weights that the machine learning model learns during its training. It's a language because it is trying to generate a plausible language based on the various data it is trained on, and it's a model. So when you talk of large language model, you're talking of billions of parameters on which it's been tuned. And then huge amount of data from Wikipedia, from magazines, from books, and from online sources that have been tagged and trained on. And what it does best is it tries to predict the next word. That's what it is. It just tries to predict the next word. So if you're looking at a pizza recipe, it'll try to predict what should go into that particular sentence. One of the most famous LLM is, of course, GPT, which is generative pre-trained transformer. The transformer here refers to a mechanism called self-attention. If you look at a couple of sentences on the right, my dog did not eat food because it was not hungry. Now, it is ambiguous. It could refer to dog or it could refer to food. But in this sentence, it refers to the dog. The sentence below, my dog did not eat food because it was not fresh. Here, it refers to food. Now, because of this complexity and ambiguity, Vaswani, one of the senior engineers at Google, came up with what is called self-attention mechanism. What this does, it allows each word to know its relationship with respect to rest of the words in that sentence. And that allows them to model this relationship that it in first sentence is referring to the dog, while it in second sentence is referring to the food. The popularity of a technology is, that you're onto something big when both the businesses and the common man on the street identifies with that technology. So if you see on the left, a chat GPT, businesses, despite knowing that it has a lot of shortcomings in terms of how things, how it spews up whatever it spews up, right? Or that, there could be hallucinations, or there could be, incorrect response. Despite that, businesses all over the world want to adopt ChatGPT or LLM for that matter in its business processes because they see tremendous value. They see tremendous efficiency gains by using something like LLM. Businesses that do not or are not able to use LLMs in view of a lot of people will just shut down. So there's also a kind of a FOMO, fear of missing out, and a lot of businesses are trying to jump on that bandwagon. On the right, this is from India. Our company is based in India, and this is a city in India called Hyderabad. And there, this is a tea-side stall where chai in Hindi is refers to tea. So they have utilized the same kind of combination to attract a lot of customers, knowing that it is such a popular name, ChatGPT. So besides LLM, LLM was designed to answer the next word, right? It's a large language model. But what people have realized that lot of emergent abilities, which is abilities that the model was not designed for, have come up. And that has been singularly astonishing and awesome. So for instance, if you look at the in-context learning, the in-context learning allows the person who's creating the prompt or person who's asking the query, it allows him to provide a cheat sheet. So along with the query, you provided a kind of the context, and the LLM learns from that context and is able to do a much better job in generating response. Uh, I mean, this obviates the need of a fine-tuning the model. Usually you would need to provide fine-tune, you would need to fine-tune the model to provide that specific context. But in this case of in-context learning, you're able to provide a cheat sheet and that's it. In the second case, you could, as part of your query, you could add various instructions. These instructions could be limit my response to only 400 words, or utilize AI keyword only 4 times in that in your response. So then the model again is able to not only take your question, but also take the instruction and is able to generate the response that follows the instruction. As the LLM has been used by a lot of people, they started using it for reasoning, for mathematical puzzles, for mathematical questions. And then it came about that if you provide the LLM with step-by-step reasoning, an example, so you can give an example question and then you can provide some step-by-step reasoning. The LLM is able to understand that, and when you ask a similar question, it is able to respond not only correctly, but also gives you chain of thought reasoning, how it has arrived at that solution. So it's quite amazing to see that a small innovation like being able to predict the next token, you are able to generate so many value addition in so many different ways. These are some of the applications of LLM that we at Think Future Technologies have been developing and providing these use cases to the industry. So that, like, for instance, I'll just walk through a few, if not all. Like voice-assisted FAQ chatbots is like a L1 support for companies that have human agents that are providing product support or technical support to its customers. So a lot of them have been kind of able to leverage the chatbot, FAQ chatbot, that provides a level 1 support to the customers, to the industry that is for its own customers. We have been using it for HR services in terms of generating good resumes, good JDs, and matching it and being able to provide more value addition from recruitment services. The third one, document compliance, something we'll show a demo right now. Here, this has been used for a pharmaceutical industry where the medicine that the pharmaceutical industry is producing, they need to accompany it with the documentation. And they want to make sure that that documentation is in compliance with the authority, with the document generated from the authority. So this could be in various parameters, right? In terms of viscosity and in terms of other variables that may be there that are required for this medicine to be, compliant to. So that's another use case that we have been addressing. There are a few other like medical. So this is medical scribing. So what that is, when the doctors are speaking, you need to be able to transcribe that into a medical text. Then there is a legal assistant. This is also interesting, the ad detection in a audio stream. So there are multiple use cases that we have been working with, and we will go ahead and demo one of them. Actually, 3 of them. I'll start with one of them first, which is Simplify Path. This is a video. It's hard to understand, so I'll just go back and do a live demo of this. So Simplify Path, I'll just talk to you about what exactly is Simplify Path. This allows So think of it as an enterprise or a company that has a lot of IT equipment, a lot of IT systems. So they could be having a human resource system, they could be having a payroll system, an accounting system, of some business system, a CRM like Salesforce, or a Gmail, a email system. So usually when a new employee joins an organization, it becomes difficult to induct that employee, or that employee has to be trained on all these different IT systems. So Simplified Path is an effort to provide one slot, one UI, which is a Google style text box where the employee can ask for information, whether it's HR or some other information related to policies, or they could also transact there. So what we offer here is, if you see here in the admin panel, these are different documents. These are different employee handbook that has been uploaded and trained on. And then if you go to integrations, so we have integrated an HRMS system called KK. We have an events management system like Google Calendar, email system like Gmail, project management like Jira, CRM like Salesforce. So these systems have been integrated on the back end. And in the front end, what happens is, I'll just quickly go to the simplified path. You have a chat bot. Let me hide this. Yeah. And here you can ask questions. So you can say hi, and okay, so this needs, let me see. Okay, so let's say here I can have an information kind of requirement. I can say, I can say, clock me in, right? So you can also have an autocomplete that allows you to clock you in. If you're already clocked in, then I think this is not working correctly. Let me try something else. Get leave. Okay. So here we can ask for a leave balance. So this is more like a transactional thing, which means now what it is doing is, it is asking, the whole system is, think of it as integrated to an HR system. It is integrated to a Salesforce CRM. It is integrated to some business software. So based on my query, it identifies that I am asking it to do a transactional thing, which is get my leave balance from my HR system. Knowing that I'm logged in as me, it'll do that, right? I could also go to, let's say, if I'm using Jira, I could say get Jira tickets, right? So what it'll now do, from this prompt, it'll understand that you are asking it to connect to my Jira application, and it'll go and get the all the Jira tickets, not all, top 5 Jira tickets, and you can ask for more, right? Similarly, you can just ask some information thing. You can say, what is the leave, what is the, let's say, no gift policy, right? So here in our company, we have no gift policy where employees are not expected to take gifts from the vendors. So it goes to the HR booklet that is being, if you see here, we had this HR booklet which we trained on over here. So it goes there, and it is able to find out the relevant portions which are relevant to this particular query, and is able to get back the response, right? So in essence, you could always ask it in terms of informational things, which is like information like this: how to mark attendance on my system. Or you could ask also things like transactional, apply leave, right? Create a meeting for me. Now, what we have done is, we have covered some actions, 5% of most used action each of these applications that we have integrated. But you could go on, and you could add more as you know, depending on what exactly is the usage within that particular enterprise. So this is one example.
By the way, Vijay sir, your first command also did work. It was just asking you uh, when you're signing on Keka, what should be your today's task to do, and it did
Oh,
work
okay.
for you. Yeah,
Which one? This. Oh, okay, okay.
the
Got
very
it.
first. Yeah, yeah.
Clock in, right? Cancel. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think what it did is there was a previous query that we had to cancel, and then it brought in this. Yeah, but some other times, if you word it differently, it may not work. But overall, what we have found that it works pretty well, and we are using it within our company for some of these newer employees that come and join us, and also for existing employees. Okay, so this is one simplified path. There is another one called doc compliance. So here I do have a video, and I'll use that. I'll not do the live demo. We couldn't set it up. And doc compliance, to give you the background, basically there is two documents. One is a source of truth, where the authorities have put all the compliance requirements. And then there is a second document that a pharmaceutical company, when it is sending that medicine for approval, needs to kind of accompany the document needs to accompany that particular medicine to the authorities. We want to make sure that whatever is captured in that document, which the pharmaceutical company is going to send to the authorities, is in compliance with the various requirements from the authorities, right? So what we did is we uploaded a particular source of truth document, and now we are uploading a second document that has various questions, which we want to make sure that these parameters are indeed as per requirements. Uh, for instance, this particular area is in this particular page, what we are asking in that video. Uh, Gaurav, feel free to add if you want to add anything. But basically, once we have uploaded that document, we are uploading an Excel with questions, and once we do the chat, the application comes back with all the responses as to whether what you asked. So if you see the result, that's a response from the application, from the chatbot. Uh, Whether whatever statement you mentioned, whether it is correct or not. So for instance, here, this guy asked, in water treatment plant, the water intended for injection should be above 90 degrees Celsius. It says, no, that's not correct, because it has to be around 70 degrees Celsius as per the documentation. And same thing you can go and ask. So now what we are demonstrating is, instead of Excel, we are putting it here as a single question here. So you could have multiple questions which you can upload in Excel, or you can go query by query. So this is a response. Similarly, the second question, can we use sterilization by radiation for all materials and products? So if you go and ask that question, do a send, and it says that sterilization by radiation is only suitable for heat sensitive materials and not all the material as such. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now we are the third one, which we just want to take a edge case, where this particular information is not there in the document, and we're going to check for it. So here it says information not present, which means it is telling, it's not hallucinating, it's not generating response on its own. Information, if it's not present in the document, it will come back and tell you that's not present. All right. So let's go back to our slides. So this was the second demo, which was doc compliance. And we'll go to the third one, which is WebBotter. So WebBotter is very interesting. What it does basically is, given a website, any website, and if you put this WebBotter, it'll convert to a chatbot. So instead of users searching and going to different pages, you can ask questions from the chatbot itself, and it'll restrict it only to the website. That particular. So I'll go here. I have another video. That video, which is part of the presentation, is too small. So yeah. So this WebBotter is attached to our website, which is TFT US, and you can ask questions from the from the website. And so we have a core value system, so it brings up core values, which it can bring information on various people who are in the company. uh, and this particular widget can be utilized to for any website. They need to attach this widget on their website, and it'll get converted to a chatbot. And we look at specifically how this is built in terms of internals. And but as of now, uh, this is the demonstration.
Yeah. So WebOtter is supposed to be a product, in-house product that can be applied to any possible website in the world. We just use, you can use this SDK as an injection in your website. You can just put it in the HTML and you get ready to use chatbot from day one. So that's the primary idea. And how it is supposed to do that is it leverages on the HTML content in your website, all the paragraph, images, video content. We do OCR, text extraction, audio to text, and HTML to text extraction. And we compile a lot of data. We compile all this data of your website, the entire data through child and parent URLs. And we are able to answer questions which are available in your website. For example, on our TFT website, you can also ask for questions like, what are the current openings in particular field? How do I contact this company? So whatever is on the website can be navigated through just one chatbot.
Yeah, thanks, Gaurav. So I'll move to the next slide. I think Gaurav, you're going to take over.
Yeah,
Mel, if you can add Gaurav, and you can yeah, share his screen.
sure. So pleasant evening, afternoon, and morning to all of you. I hope you have enjoyed the session till now, where we were able to understand few of the applications of LLM. And as developers, we might already be aware of what LLM and Gen AI is doing in today's generation. Uh, Looking at the applications, it does feel like drinking a great cup of coffee, but uh, we often tend to uh, oversee or not care about the efforts or the challenges which come to bring that cup of coffee on your table. The amount of laborious efforts, the transportation, and all the logistics which face a lot of challenge. That is what is the real deal with LLMs too. To build such products, to build such applications, there are many challenges that have to be overcome. And for that fact, few of the challenges that we can definitely talk about are hallucinations, data privacy, usability, and lack of repeatability. Let us dive deep into them. If I am supposed to ask a question to a child who might not know the concept of what I'm asking, just to show the confidence, the child might still attempt to answer it. Or if you just catch up a politician in its raw form and try to ask something, they might tend to answer incorrect things with pretty good confidence. So that's what happens with the large language models. The nature of large language models is supposed to be probabilistic, like they use a sequence to sequence modeling. So given an input, they have to merge, stitch some sequence and produce an output. Now, if some probabilities goes wrong, some incorrect tokens are selected, you are weaving or stitching a wrong answer. So in that terms, hallucination often happens in large language models, where they tend to merge up wrong sequence and create an answer which according to the model seems to be correct, but may be completely polar opposite of what was expected. When it comes to data privacy has become a huge problem in today's IT world. Primarily talking about certain industries which have sensitive data, could be military, could be private organizations, could be pharmaceutical industries, medical industries, uh, and also the industries which hold your personal records, contact numbers. These companies would not want to expose their data to a third party large language model, or maybe skeptical to use solutions which tend to use or uh, inject any authority to grant their data access, right? So there are, of course, certain ways to overcome challenges. We will talk about them. The next one would be usability. So when we talk about usability, we all have used ChatGPT in our life as developers. I'm sure many of us have. So a lot of times we might be disappointed with the quality of the output, or our expectations are not met. So that's where the challenge with usability come into picture, that LLMs, though this seems straightforward, they sometimes may not be usable directly with the first attempt. Maybe we want to solve a mathematical problem, but there's a usability issue that we might have to look into, improve the prompt, or maybe make the model better understand what we're trying to use over there, and then reach to a solution. Again, though LLMs are designed to be diverse, they are generative in a sense that they use probability to generate and use a lot of variation. So variation is like the genetics of LLM, but it also serves as a curse to the model, because when we talk about any scientific discipline, any mathematical model, uh, on theory, on paper, or in reality, it is supposed to be repeatable. What does this mean is that as developers, as mathematicians, we have learned that functions are well defined machines which take strict input, and for input they provide a very strict output. So suppose if I am trying to ask the large language model, define anything, say define what does it mean by repeatability, the answer might vary and will vary every time you try to ask the same question. So this becomes a huge problem when we are trying to make solutions with LLM which are supposed to be fact-based, or are supposed to be used in educational institutes, or uh, problems where repetition has to happen. Although there are many ways to overcome it, we will talk about a few of the parameters that we can use to tackle this. So let us proceed by understanding how we can overcome such challenges. The first thing is that we will talk about few of the most common strategies that one should apply. The first one is prompt optimization. You can never go wrong when you choose this method, and this should be your first stepping stone in overcoming the challenges. We will talk about RAG, we will talk about retrieval augmentation generation along with function calling and fine tuning soon enough. But let us first dwell on prompt optimization and how it can increase the usability of your model. So many a times when we try to use the LLM, we should first understand one analogy. How in say a span of 10 years from now, we used to say that some people have good abilities to produce the correct search result on Google, or search engines, was that they understood the type of text that goes into search engines, and to quickly find what they're looking for. It is the same scenario when it comes to large language models. Often the general public, or the open public for which the models are available, non-tech people, they tend to understand, or they tend to take LLMs as intelligent being, where human language is comfortable with both sides, right? But as developers, we should realize that large language models are nothing but based on the transformer genetics model, which uses probability to generate sequence, right? So in such cases, if you try to talk to the large language model as a natural human, you might not be able to generate the correct result. Even before going into different research papers, different strategies such as few shot, zero shot, chain of thought, tree of thought, and many more such research papers, let us first understand how at a very bare level, as a intelligent human, as a conscious human, we can try to improve the prompt. The very first thing that we should understand is that LLMs work well, like at least from our practical use cases, we have analyzed this, talking from the experience of OpenAI, Gemini, and open source models, that If we are planning to work on a task, say we want to work on content generation, we want to work on summarization, it is important that our prompt starts with that your role, you give a role play to the model that your role is to work as a content writer. uh, the next thing is that you should set the tonality and the theme of the output, and the type of output you're looking for. Maybe you want to generate content for a fifth grade student. You would not want to talk about large language models as a probabilistic model, right? You would want to talk something simple, that large language models are uh, a computer, you can say computer programs that are able to talk to you in natural language. I mean, like, that's the level of highness you would like to keep in your response. So it is important to set the correct temperament tonality, that you are a content writer and you're writing content for a fifth grade student, or maybe you're writing content for professionals of say pharmaceutical domain or medical domain, or whatever is your audience. You are to maintain a professional tone, and make sure that the response is under a limit, and you can address few edge cases. And this is the basic skeleton for any prompt which should be used. Along with it, we always start with zero shot prompting. What does this mean? That we have realized over time with experience that the more constraints you try to put on the large language model, the more it tends to hallucinate, because there are multiple rules it has to look into and often tries to fail over there. So the good strategy to create a great prompt should be to start with simple. Uh, Maybe if you want to solve a mathematical problem, just give the problem and let us see first if we get the desired result. So zero shot prompting is by just simply quoting in simple terms what do you want, and check if the model works over there. If the model does not, then comes into picture few shot prompting. What does this mean is that we provide some examples to the model, and then expect an answer from it, right? So again, even if few shot, like for example, I'll tell you, if uh, I was supposed to use a few shot prompting, the prompt could be something like this. If suppose if I have to create a sentence completion prompt, I'll give first question is equals to the sky is, and the answer is blue. Similarly, I'll give the next question now, that maybe the night is, and now expect the model to answer. Looking into the previous question answer, I have already provided one question and answer to set the theme of what I'm expecting. Uh, Few shot can also be used to set the theme of what output are we expecting. If we are expecting output to be in a JSON format, we can provide one sample answer, that suppose this is the type of question you will get, this is the type of answer we want, and now this is the question to you. You come back with the answer. Uh, so these are some ways that we can improve. Talking about chain of thought, it is again an interesting method to prompt, and it is also visible on the slide. That suppose if we want to ask the model a complex task, I'll still use a simpler example. Suppose if you want to solve a mathematical problem which uses BODMAS principle, which is bracket, open, divide, multiply, add, subtract, uh, and the model seems to provide a wrong answer to that mathematical equation, it is a good opportunity to introduce chain of thought prompting. What chain of thought prompting does is it tries to inject a thought process on how something can be solved. So that is that you try to introduce the BODMAS principle. You try to explain in the prompt itself that to solve such a problem, we use BODMAS principle and what does it mean. And you derive step by step, you break down the problem into micro problems and provide a solution to the LLM. And now is the time that you inject the question that you want the LLM to solve for you. So that would be a chain of thought prompting, and trust me, these are just few different variations, and I believe in my technical career of handling LLMs, a few shots and chain of thoughts have definitely worked well for me. Uh, you can consider tree of thoughts, which is again one more strategy, one more research paper published, to be something like decision tree, where there are multiple chain of thoughts, and let the LLM decide which chain works better. And yeah, you will find many more if you try to research a bit about prompt optimization or prompt engineering. Let us
Gaurav,
yeah.
I think we have 10 more minutes before we need to leave 10 minutes for the Q&A at the end.
Okay, so I'll just quickly move into RAG. So RAG is a strategy where we introduce more knowledge or updated knowledge into the existing large language models. What does this mean is that, let us take OpenAI for an example. ChatGPT has a limitation of data cutoff, right? From September 21, or you can go, you can just go back to that era, and whatever was the availability of knowledge, it is limited to that. What if we want to create a domain specific LLM and we don't want to invest resources in fine tuning something? We want to create a domain specific or a LLM which is able to do some L1 support system or work on specific documents such as doc compliance or maybe like web border, for example. So this is where RAG comes into picture. We convert our documents which explain that domain into vector spaces, and now when a question is asked to the LLM, this question is broken down into vector space again, and using vectors we match which part of the document is mostly matching with the question, and then provide both the question and the matched part of the document to LLM to generate the response. Next thing is function calling. So function calling is again a great way to add more real-time access to the data, or do more real-time tasks by introducing API calls into LLM itself. Due to a limitation of time, I'll just quickly talk about what is fine tuning, which is nothing but, suppose that RAG has its own limitation, right? That if the documents are, say, in a volume, if they are large enough, it's that rather than using RAG, we should create a transferred learning model for us. We can use any base model, but when I say any base model, we have to very sure that the model we are choosing is correct for us. If we want to go for a medical domain, we should first do our R&D that our base model is good enough for that. If we want to create a content creating model, we go for that. Once you've selected our base model, the next thing is that we should pre-process our data. What does pre-processing mean is that we clean our text, we try to initialize some layers, especially the last layers of the model. We train the model on this new data, and we create a fine-tuned model for ourselves, which can be run locally or even on OpenAI platforms. Again, data privacy, let's just quickly cut it in a minute. That the best strategy is that you should follow a role-based access control strategy or multi-factor authentication to make sure correct people have access to your data. The tuning, the fine tuning or deployment of the large language models should strictly be done on client servers. Nothing should be taken on company premises if the data is sensitive. One of the best strategies that I would like to encourage all of you to use is strong data cleaning measures. We should make sure that all the email IDs, contacts, name, numbers, you can say general identification IDs, such data should be masked before passing it anywhere, so that we can rest assured that the data is safe to use. So we will skip the takeaways. It is just a few of the important takeaways that we were supposed to have. And the idea is that rather than investing time in coding, I have created some interesting notebooks for us. Let us just try to overview the code, because I believe that even if I try to stretch this coding exercise, it might take more than 15-20 minutes. Okay, so I'll just share my the screen where I'm coding. Let me just switch to present the entire screen. I would have definitely loved to code this in real time with you, but I'll try to explain line by line what we have coded here. So let us understand how can we make something like RAG. Let my screen come up. So I have reshared my screen if it can be visible.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Let me just confirm.
Yeah, it seems to be coming. Yeah, it's come.
It's live. Okay. So let us first talk about how we can. Let me also zoom in a bit. Yeah, I hope this text size is enough. So I'm initially creating a folder where I can store my documents, which are supposed to be my knowledge base. Uh, it could be anything, right? It could be a pharmaceutical document, or how you saw the example of doc compliance. We could have many compliance documents, or it could be something as simple as a car washing document, which explains how should we wash our car properly, right? So next thing would be we will be choosing LangChain. It is a framework which is used to create in solutions using large language models. It encompasses of storing your prompt templates, storing your models, loading the models, uh, creating agents, and performing actions. So LangChain is a framework. How backend developers can use different frameworks like Django or Flask to create a backend application. To create a LLM application, we can rely on frameworks like LangChain. Uh, ChromaDB is again the type of a database which allows us to store our files in vector space. It is a vector DB. We will be installing the required dependencies, which might take up around 3.5 minutes to install. Once it is done, this is just some regular or a generic code that allows Jupyter Notebook to quickly make sure that the display stays in the correct format. Next is here are we importing different libraries. You can see from LangChain, we are importing the embeddings, which is Hugging Face Instruct Embedding Model. We are using Retrieval QA. This is the type of chain that we would like to use, which is like a RAG based. We are using ChromaDB. We are using transformers and the pipeline from it. So these are few basic things that we need to import. Once it is done, we need to explain the model name or path. So this is the model name that we will use. It is open source Llama 2 7 billion model. If you want to try 13 billion, you can just switch to 13 billion from here. Not a big deal. And once it is done, you would like to load the model in your memory. So you pass the model name, the precision type, and the device map, and few basic parameters required to load the model. Once the model is loaded, we will load the tokenizer. And once this we have it, next thing is to set the temperature. So I'll talk about few important, you can say important parameters which are to be set for an LLM. So temperature is like, you can say spices in food, right? The higher the spices, the more variation of maybe producing something interesting. Lower the spices, more bland your food, maybe it will be generally acceptable by your audience. So what does it mean that when you are doing something serious which requires more fact-based, more focused solutions, your temperature should be around 0 or 0.1, 0.2. You should test it around for your particular application. If you want variations, if you want your model to do something creative, temperature should be around max level. So for GPT's temperatures value ranges from 0 to 2. Again, there is a top P parameter which can be used alternative to temperature, which suggests that say if top P is equals to 4, then to produce the next token, to produce the next sequence, the model will only use top 4 probability tokens which can be chosen for that task. So if you reduce the top P parameter, you are again going more towards a focused zone, more towards rule-based and deterministic approach that a model should use. So we are setting the stream pipeline, and once we have the stream pipeline set, we are adding things into our pipeline. You can see our top P, I have set it right over here. The temperature is set to 0.9. We have set a repetition penalty. Again, repetition penalty is one more hyper parameter that, or a parameter input parameter that we can use in LLMs, which puts a penalty on repetition of tokens in the current sequence. Once it is done, we use embedding models, and we convert our input into text. So I'll just have to quickly show you the input if possible. Since I'm sharing my entire screen, it should be fair enough. Okay. All right. Let me see if this can be shared here. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So you can see this is a car cleaning tips for pro. This document talks about how to clean our car correctly and many things, right? How to tidy the interior, how to do the exterior, how to wash it, and things like that. So once we go back, we understand how RAGs work. So RAG converts our words into vector space where similar vectors are nearby to each other. For example, male and king would have more distance similarity as compared to a king and a female, right? So similar things lie around each other. That's the vector space in vector form. So we will load the directory. You can also use file loader if you just want to use one single PDF. We are loading the complete directory. Once we have loaded it, we will convert the text into chunks. What this chunk means is that we do not pass the entire PDF in one way. We have to find some strategy where we can cut the PDF into smaller chunks so that paragraphs are separated well. This is the most important task. The heart of creating RAG lies in your chunking strategy. You should make sure that your pre-processing step of splitting your document into chunks make sure that the paragraphs are correctly split. And this only comes with trial and error. You have to work around and build strategies to make chunking strategies. So once you have chunked your data, you just store it into a vector space. And next step is to create a prompt. So when we're creating a prompt, this is one example prompt that I'm passing in, that you're a vehicle cleaning assistant bot. You assist humans in queries related to cleaning a vehicle. And if the query is not from the given document, just go back and say, I'm not designed to answer this question. A simple query, a zero-shot prompt attempt. And once this is done, we fit everything into a question answer chain of LangChain. We pass the language model, which is Llama 2. We pass the chain type, the retriever, and all the parameters goes in right over there. So once it is done, now our RAG is ready to be used, and we can just ask, where should I wash my car? And you can see that the answer which are coming in now, if you just quickly go to chat GPT for an example and ask, where should I wash my car? So you see, it says you can wash it at home, you can wash it at service center, you can use automatic car washers, or maybe use some service. Whereas our bot talks about shaded areas, car wash stations, and uh, look for a shaded spot near your home or a local park. This will help you keep your car cool while you're washing it, reducing the risk of damage on its finish. So you see, we have made our bot smarter to reply on a particular domain by using RAG. And what kind of soap should I use? You need not now explicitly tell every time that we are talking about cars, we are talking about vehicles. Your model knows what you're talking about because this model is strictly used to answer back things if they are making sense as per the document. If it is sensible as per the document, you get a response. And if you see, if I'm asking you, hi, who are you? So if you see, I've changed the prompt a little bit. You are a Mr. Patrick and you're an expert vehicle cleaning bot. So if you see, the model answers as per the updated prompt. And well, this is how you create RAG in under 2-3 minutes. But I'll be sharing this notebook with you. I'll be sharing all the source code. So rest assured. Let us now just quickly jump into one more way to look into how we can use function callings. So function calling is again interesting. Let me just quickly go back to show you from where was I
Gaurav,
able to.
uh,
Yes, yes, sir.
if there are any questions, we can answer that and then come back to this if we have time. Uh,
Okay, okay, sure.
we are just 8 minutes, 7 minutes away. Mel, do you think we can look at some questions?
Yes, of course. And then if we have some time left, you guys can then continue. First of all, thank you very much for your presentation and presenting some of your really cool products. We have some questions, so let me start with the first one. Can we integrate the same self-best in other organizations as well, or it's trained on specific data?
No, as I showed, you can actually, there are two pieces to it. One is the informational. So we have an admin panel where you can submit your own documents and it'll get kind of fine tuned on those documents, which means it's not pre-trained. We of course are using chat GPT for intent recognition for text generation, but data, your question related to data, you can put your own data to train on, and you can do it yourself, through the admin panel. The second part of the question is integration. So based on your company, you may be integrating with one HR versus another HR. So if that HR is not currently supported by self-best, we can come and help you integrate, or we can help you integrate with that. So those are the two subparts of that question.
Okay, perfect. Then we have another question. Can reg be done offline?
Yeah, of course. If your large language model is hosted on an offline premises, RAG can also be done offline. Yeah.
Perfect. Another interesting question. Is your product also suitable for small businesses?
Yes, of course. I think small businesses require more automation because they have less resources. And I think it's LLM with function calling, which is what uh, Gaurav was trying to show at the end when I kind of cut short that demo. But basically, with function calling and combining it with LLM, you can actually bring actionability. You can actually bring automatability into a variety of use cases within the organization. They could be processes running your business, raising invoices, right? Receiving timesheets, ordering something. All that can be automated using LLM.
Perfect. Yeah, I think as you said, it's really then suitable for small businesses as they need a lot of things to be working, but might not have all the resources.
Correct.
Yeah, and then maybe another interesting question is what's the next feature you're working on with your chatbot?
Yeah, so there are two things. One is with the L1 support FAQ chatbot, we are trying to build human assistance. So in 98% case it works well, in 2% case when it doesn't, we want the chat to bring in a human expert or human agent automatically. So that's one feature we are working with respect to the FAQ chatbot. With respect to simplify path, what we are trying to do is we are trying to obviously build more integrations, but more importantly we are trying to do it yourself kind of capability. So which means an enterprise can bring in, let's say, a new CRM which we have not integrated. We can give them how to do it, and kind of they can go to the admin and they can add and they can map the APIs. So it's kind of a do it yourself kind of ability that allows our simplified path to be scalable to different and diverse organizations.
Oh, that's really interesting, and also I think following the industry as it is currently.
Yes.
Another question is exactly about the industry. So, how do you see LLMs evolving in the next 5 years for the industry use, actually?
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer a piece of it and maybe Gaurav can add his views. I think, as you would have also heard about LAMs, large action models. So while large language models are more about information, generating information, creating content, answering questions, a lot of this will need to be actionable. And so now you have function calling that allows you to do that. But I think more and more of this will get integrated with actionability. So you have large action models where LLMs drive it to actually carry out the action. For instance, if you want to book, you just want to say, okay, book my trip for 7 days to Italy, in various cities. You should be automatically able to go generate a itinerary, go to the booking site, find the best booking site, generate the itinerary, and come back to you and say, here, this is the price, right? So that actionability is something that's going to come up more and more. Of course, we'll have to build guardrails to ensure that something doesn't go wrong. But yes, that's where I think it's going. Gaurav, your take?
Yeah. So large language models is a big leap in terms of technology, and currently it is still a half baked product, I would say. It is very young, naive, and even we as humans, or even the big tech industries, are still exploring the complete use cases, or the areas where LLMs can be applied. Every day we find very interesting applications of LLMs, new research coming into. But talking about the next 5 years of forecast of LLM from a technical perspective, I do see that we have already seen that how the context limit is increasing day by day. Like GPT-4 has come up. Gemini has launched a model which can take up to 1 lakh tokens as input now. Even the output tokens are increasing. The response time, which is a big problem with the LLMs, might go away. There might be some architectural changes, which will definitely help LLMs find more and more better responses, less hallucinations. So that's, I think, we will see a huge leap in terms of performance in the next 5 years for LLMs, and maybe less resource consumption, which right now they are very heavy when it comes to running an LLM.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I actually agree. It makes sense as Vijay said, with the more action based LLMs, and also more yeah, using less resources. Okay, maybe we have time for maybe just one last question, but for a quick answer. Is LLM relatable to mathematical concept, and if yes, how?
Oh,
And
yes,
if
of
it's
course.
possible to answer this quickly.
Yeah. Yes, of course, it is relatable. To answer it quickly, it is built using mathematical model. It is a mathematical model at the base, using probability as its foundational core of concept. So yeah, it is a mathematical model.
Yeah, I think everything is mathematics, because you basically machine understands zeros and ones. So you need to find way to represent everything in that context, right? So you have vectors, you have embeddings, you have probability. So all those are math and dimensions, right? All these parameters are different dimensions. So we in real world you have only three dimensions, right? But when in this
Exactly.
world you have millions of billions of dimensions, right?
True. That's correct, and I think it's everything math connecting together in different ways. Yeah, that would be our time for the questions today. Thank you very much for your time and for your presentations. I really hope, and I know it was insightful for viewers. And yeah, hopefully see you soon again.
Yes. So I don't know if you can see my screen. So we are available here at info@tftus.com. We're also hiring in Europe. We have an office in Europe, in Berlin. And so happy to have people call us, join us. And if they have any questions, we are happy to answer offline as well.
Perfect. We encourage our viewers to do that. And yeah, I wish you guys a pleasant day.
Thank
Okay.
you, Mel. Thank you, Vince. And great to be here with We Are Developers. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank you. Okay, everyone. That was our first session for today, and I hope you all enjoyed. Right now, it's time for our next session, which I think it's really interesting, especially from the title, which is From Syntax to Singularity, AI's Impacts on Developer Roles. Joining me on the stage is Anna, and she is a cloud solution expert at ACP IT Solutions. Welcome, Anna.
Hello, thank you for having me. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, I can hear you very well. Welcome to our live stage. Hope you're doing well. Can you maybe just give us a quick intro on what can we expect from you from your talk today, and then I will leave you to it.
Perfect, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Yes, the agenda for today will be who am I and why do I get to talk about this topic? Is this maybe something you're wondering about? We'll look at the one and only truth. There's only one. Will AI replace us developers? It's something that we ask ourselves, I think, every day at the current climate. We'll be taking a closer look at current AI capabilities in development contexts, and I think that's the most important part at the very end of the sessions. We'll be looking at implications for both junior and senior developers and IT professionals in terms of what do I do with this? Should I be looking for a different job, or how should I tackle this entire change of things at the moment?
Perfect. I'm really looking forward to it, as I am a junior developer. So let's see. Hopefully, the answer to the second question is no.
I hope so too. Well, then let's get started. First of all, disclaimer. These are mostly general principles in my presentation that apply to different models and different vendors, but please mind that my examples come largely from Microsoft and OpenAI due to access and cost reasons. The reasons for these I will give you in a minute. Also, my slides might be outdated already because I think you can see it as well that every day something new is coming up. Those were finished 2 weeks ago in the context of AI. That's a whole lot of time that has already passed already. So be aware. And most important, I'm not an AI expert. I'm just an expert AI user who's a developer who's using those capabilities. But with that being said, let's get started. So first of all, who am I? My name is Anna Fritsch-Weninger. I am a so-called Microsoft MVP. That stands for Most Valuable Professionals, which is a, if you will, a special certification in the Microsoft Cloud field. And I'm the only Microsoft MVP for Power Automate. That's part of my stack in Austria. I've been working in IT since 2006, and I'm currently working as a cloud solutions expert at ACP IT Solutions, which roughly translates to me being a cloud programmer with the stack of the Power Platform, Microsoft 365, Azure, PowerShell, and Python. So this is my very specific stack that I'm operating in, which is a good stack to work with if you want to use AI capabilities. Why do I get to talk about this topic? Basically, my educational background is I studied IT and linguistics. I have 2 masters in that part. This is for topics that are concerned with generative AI and match made in heaven, because obviously prompt engineering and training data and things as such are heavily influenced by these topics, but also because I talked about it before it was cool. So you can see here a YouTube video of me 5 years ago where I was talking about how AI would change in the next couple of years. Why did I do a YouTube video 5 years ago? I was supposed to write my PhD on AI, and that's really about 7 years ago when the whole topic of AI really caught on with vendors. And I had to make that concession of, am I going to spend 4 years on a PhD that will be outdated, or will I just drop the science, sadly, but luckily, and adopt the hands-on? And we went for hands-on. We did a couple of really interesting projects, one being, if you've ever seen it, roughly 7 years ago, a Alexa custom skill. Back then, it was all the rage. It was so innovative that nobody used it. But we've been dabbling with that sort of technology for a while. So obviously, in the current climate where things are much more easily available and much more impactful, it's a really interesting time to be in. Right, so let's get to the point straight away. The number one question that you all hear about, will AI replace us developers? And I'm going to tell you there's only one truth. And to get to that truth, we're going to go to my really incredibly fancy app. My truth is stored in my OneNote. It's incredibly fancy what I built. So again, we're going to be asking my app, will AI replace us developers? And we'll look at what it does. That's a shame. Okay, thank you for being here. I have to tell you that sadly, the answer apparently in this app is yes. We could ask it again, by the way, and we would get a different result. Why? Because personally, for me, the truth is it going to replace us? Nobody knows. And I think anybody who says otherwise, in my humble opinion, is a liar. But we might as well, for that reason, ask my randomizer. So that beautiful application that you said here is just a HTML plus JavaScript randomizer. But the important aspect I want you to take away here is this randomizer was entirely built by an AI. I already told you at the beginning that my stack is Power Platform and so on and so forth. So I'm not a front-end developer. I don't do color. I don't do web applications or what they look like. And I spent 7 minutes with a generic Gen AI to come up with, in a dialogue, the code for this specific web page. And I think what you should take away from this is, first of all, if you're a web developer, yes, you should be really worried. That's the one thing I'm going to say. But definitely for all of us developers, just that we should definitely do our homework, meaning we should look at what's currently possible. How is it going to impact our personal roles, and what are we going to do with the takeaway? And this is what this session today is all about. Before we go into the more sort of hands-on-ish part, let's just look at what AI can do and what it not can do. And to start things off like that, I want to look at the concept of singularity first, because that's in my title, right? I said from syntax to singularity. Again, I dropped the PhD, so I'm not completely great on the science, but just roughly some guide things to warm us up in this topic. So syntax, I think we all agree on, are of course the set of rules that govern how code is written. That's the very thing, the very fabric that developers have been relying on for such a long time. And in comes that concept of singularity. Where does it come from? It's actually from physics, apparently, which is a point beyond which our existing understanding fails to describe reality. But it soon left that realm as well and entered the topic of sci-fi literature, which of course isn't always just fiction, but it has some facts mixed into it. And soon the term technological singularity out of the physics realm was coined. And it's really interesting because that technological singularity describes a hypothetical future in which technology is so advanced that it goes beyond human knowledge and control. So what does that mean for us in an AI singularity context? First of all, if you're really interested in predictions and looking into the glass cube to see where the future goes, Werner Winch, who kind of coined this technical singularity term, had this forecast in his literature where he would say technical singularity would become a reality around 2030. So there's one opinion for you. But of course, for us, what are we looking for in terms of AI singularity in developer contexts is AI smarter than humans at a level which we can never achieve and independent of humans right now? That's the number one question I want to look at today. The last bit on the theoretical aspect, of course, there are different opinions out there. So what is the general opinion on this when you ask experts on this field? The underlying principle is they don't agree. So you can see an example here. Even Sam Altman said, I'm a little bit scared of my creation. The reason for that being that experts say when you ask them if this is ever going to be real, that they're between thinking it's a genuine danger that is going to be really here at some point. So AI is going to be smarter than humans. And then there's the other end of people who say it's complete, please excuse my French, complete bullshit. So it really depends on who you're talking to kind of get an answer to that question. That's the science out there anyway at the moment. So when I say we're going to be looking at what AI can do in sort of context, I want to just do a brief shout out for the concept of data quality, meaning data quality when you're looking or when you're evaluating AI performance is absolutely key. And at the moment, it's also absolutely obscure. Because the results that you usually get from your different models, from the different technologies that you see with vendors, usually depends on different things. Obviously, the model that's being used, so there are different models for different things. But importantly, also the context the model is trained for. So this is why today we're also going to be looking at what does a general AI do for developers as opposed to a programming purpose AI. So that context is key in terms of the outputs that you're getting as well. And of course, what also impacts the whole thing is the restrictions enabled for that model. So obviously, depending on where you go and what kind of AI you're using, you might be able to prompt a thing like, tell me a joke about women. And depending on what kind of AI you're using, you might get a ton of really horrible jokes, or you might be getting something like my ethical restrictions do not allow for me to make that kind of joke. And that, of course, has its pros and cons, but it also means that the content and the quality of the content that you're getting back can be impacted by those sort of restrictions, blacklisting, and so on and forth. And very important as well is, of course, when you're looking at AI capabilities as a kind of result of training data, that things heavily depend on the quality, the history, the context, and the bias of the training data. So when you think of vendors, kind of like think they want to come up with the best, most awesome AI, right? So they say, okay, my AI model will be the best. And how can I achieve that? I'm going to be feeding it a huge amount of all the data available out there. And that big question about that bias and the history of the data is, of course, when we're saying all the data available, is it data only from a specific period? Is it only stuff that's very recent, or have they been including everything that's ever been produced by mankind? Does that make a difference? Yes, it does. Is it, as one annoying example, only data provided by male, white, middle-class North American business people? Or Is it very diverse data? Is that somehow impacting results? And of course, when you're talking about where you can get all the data available, and even the big vendors, and this is something that's still going on, figuring out how they can get everything. Are they looking at or taking into account the entire data on the net? Or for developer purpose, AI, is it just data from GitHub? Or is it just scientific academic libraries? Or is it paywall or free media? And all of this, of course, impacts the kind of outputs you get. Because if you just take one example, if you're feeding your model just with GitHub, this might be incredibly good, but might it also be incredibly bad in some things? So all of this goes into a never-ending task, which is for anyone who's working on this, getting this right. And getting this right is really expensive. So you will never have the perfect thing just yet right now, because this is really, really hard to get right. But also that means for you as a kind of end customer developer, the quality of the AI capabilities that you get really also depends on the moment on the amount of money that you're willing to pay, or the amount of data that you're willing to pay. Because the general depressing rule at the moment is AI capabilities are out there. There's a lot, but if it's free-ish, the results will be less pleasing. And what am I talking about when I say the data quality is obscure? Of course, unless you use your own training data, you will never find out how it was trained. So let's just keep that in mind when we're looking at some of the capabilities and what they do for us in developer contexts. So I wanted to show you some demos, examples, especially from my stack. I'm going to be showing you briefly from, I said I'm a Power Automate MVPs. I'm going to be showing you Power Automate Copilot. For time reasons, I had to skip Power Apps functions and Azure Video Indexer, but if that's something that's interesting to you, take a screenshot and you can get in touch afterwards. And then we're going to be looking at putting side by side the dev capabilities of two specific AIs, which is GitHub Copilot, which is what I'm going to be roughly calling the dev AI that we're using here in our prompts, versus Azure OpenAI. In Azure OpenAI, you can choose the underlying model. I think for my examples, it was GPT 3.5, but I would have to look it up. But anyway, here we're going to be talking about not a specific purpose, but a general AI that we're going to be putting side by side. So let's get into the more hands-on part of this demo. First of all, I'm going to show you, I said my stack is largely Power Automate. This is something, even if you know it or not, this is something that my work, daily work, makes up 90% of the stuff that I do. And I just want to show you what in my stack is possible at the moment. So we're going to be taking this prompt here. Just for you, in a nutshell, Power Automate enables you to create automations, so you can put things side by side that happen with specific triggers, and you have a web UI where you can do this. And I'm going to just say, okay, I want the product of Power Automate is called a flow. So I'm going to go to Power Automate and say, okay, I want to create a flow that runs every Tuesday at 9 a.m. that sends me a nice message of what a great programmer I am and that women in IT are really awesome. So let's do this. Go to Power Automate. This is M365. We're going to go, this is Power Automate, skip. And you can see here, and here you would be putting together your automation. And you have this little window on the side, which is Copilot. And I'm just going to take that prompt that we had. And please notice at the moment it says add a trigger. I'm putting in the prompt right away. And then hopefully my internet is fast enough. If not, I've already had it run. Okay, so you can see here already, immediately without understanding the product that we have here is this specific Power Automate Copilot is built into Power Automate, which means not only can it give you not only can it generate code or data, as you could usually see from GPT, but it's actually accessing all the capabilities that Power Automate has and is influencing them. This is taking a while, so I'm just going to skip forward and say, roughly, this usually takes between 1 and 3 minutes at the moment. What would be the output that you get? When it's done, it's going to put together here. So remember, we looked, this was the prompt, create a flow that runs every Tuesday at 9 a.m. So it's put together a recurrence, a weekly recurrence every Tuesday at 9 a.m. And that sends me a nice message of what a great programmer I am and that women are awesome in IT. The AI here, Copilot, chose Microsoft Teams as the medium of sending a message in a chat. And it's put in, hi, I didn't specify the name. I just wanted to remind you what a great programmer you are, la-di-la-di-la. Nicely, all the \n in here as well. So you can see, of course, this is not the most complex flow, most complex automation that I have to build in my daily doing. But if I tell you that this is my main stack and this is possible within 3 minutes, this is daunting. This is definitely something that is already affecting me as a low-code / cloud developer. It's not super great at the moment, so I constantly, every week I go back and I try to put in really complex things, and at the moment I'm still winning. At the moment, people need me to create the best possible automations in here. But personally, I think it's only a matter of time until I have to look for a different stack. So that's already daunting, right? We had the web developers where 7 minutes and you get this great yes/no app. Power Automate, where Copilot is like, let me do that for you. And now we're going to go into the topic of prompt exploration. So let's look at a couple of dev prompts that might be more generic, so not just in low-code Power Automate stack. And mostly what I'll be trying to do is we'll go further. We'll go from very generic, general purpose prompts to more deep dive type prompts. And usually where it fits, I will put side by side the different outputs that you get from the general AI versus the developer AI. And keep in mind, for me, the general AI being Azure OpenAI with GPT something, and I know that's important to something, I'll look it up which one it was, and the GitHub Copilot Dev AI. So the first prompt, a very general one, has got nothing to do with dev yet, is I went into the models and said, I posted an off-topic prompt, if you will. So I said, okay, I think something, I imagine something, I think my boss is treating me unfairly, what should I do? Whenever you see this blue with gray, that's the general AI, that's Azure AI Studio, where you can try out the model and everything you've done to see how it interacts in a chat situation. So the general AI was like, okay, I'm sorry you experiencing this situation. Here are the steps that you can do. And then I put the same prompt into the dev AI. And that's quite interesting because GitHub already said, as an AI programming assistant, I specialize in software development topics. Now, that's already very interesting because even though we're not in the developer context yet, it's very interesting to see that those restrictions that I talked about before in the where is my data coming from, can be a good or a bad thing, but it's just something that if you have different things to do in your daily doing as a developer, you should keep in mind that you will get very different results from your prompts. So to warm off the off-topic prompt, let's look at the second example. And bear in mind, most of you will probably think, why would I ask GPT that? Why would I go into an AI? I can look this up on the web. I'll tell you at the end why this is still a very valid prompt. The background here was a customer was interested. They had some kind of custom solution software, and they asked me if with my stack, I could be building a new custom version for them using SharePoint Online. And they posted some information in an email to say what their current model does in German, or what their current software does in German. So I went off, took this information, and I decided to feed it into the general AI. So I said, the client needs this feature. What do they mean by that? Something, 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 something. This is exactly verbatim what the client said. And interestingly, in that further conversation with the general AI, not only got I, just like I prompted anyway, the information what these things mean, what they do in my stack in SharePoint Online, but also towards the end, I also got where I can find it in SharePoint Online, how I can set it up, and so on and so forth. And that, of course, even as a developer, might be something that might be really interesting and useful to you, because you might now say, okay, hang on, why would I feed that into an AI when I can Google that? I think that really depends on your stack. With my stack, which I told you is largely Microsoft-based, the one thing that I don't have is documentation. I know this is going to be on the internet forever and ever and ever. There is sometimes documentation, but the general rule is the more specific it is, the more German it is, and the more deep dive in a specific setting it is, the less likely you're going to find official documentation. And usually for things like that, when I Google them, I'm stuck with stuff that is up to 4 years old, only in English, and most of the time wrong or outdated. You can't find anything on Stack Overflow because it's not a programming issue. So in a normal setting, finding an answer for this would probably take me 1 to 5 hours. This took me 2 minutes. I think this already has huge implications for some of the tasks that we're doing in our daily developer life, how this is going to impact the time that we have to spend on other things. So just very interesting second prompt in terms of meta information. Let's take it up a notch. Let's look at one of my favorite examples, reliable web info. Let's see what I wanted. I went to the dev AI and said, please provide me with 3 valid links on the web for good, free, and login-free quality learning materials on cybersecurity. Now, this would be another example on web, but of course here I would be going one step further and not just asking anything, but I wanted valid links. I wanted some kind of evaluation by GPT to say which ones are good, and an evaluation as well as on login free. So I'm passing on all kinds of things that would require manual work at this point. And generally, as a sort of disclaimer for you, already that's a kind of take-home message. At the time being, when I tested GitHub Copilot, it was really much more helpful for my programming tasks than the general AI. But even this one, which is not free, by the way, gave me, as part of the 3 links that it provided me with, one of them was Coursera. And of course, if you know Coursera, there's good stuff on there, but it doesn't adhere with login free. So Coursera, obviously, you need to sign up. You need to do something else. And something that you will see a lot of times, and I'm interested to see when this is going to be different. One of them, cybery.it, didn't exist. This is something that happens a lot with many AIs, that they are just so creative and so generative that they're creating things that do not exist. So our third example, reliable web info. Yeah, it depends. You have to take this one. So I think this is an example where, as a developer, you say if this is something you need to do, your job is still safe, definitely, at this point. Now let's take it up a notch and say, okay, we're going to be looking at examples that are closer to what developers do as their daily tasks. So we have a classic example here. I have a CSV file, which has, in my example, it's 19, but let's say it's got hundreds of thousands of rows. And I'm feeding into my 2 AIs that it should fetch all anomalies. And I'm not specifying further. I'm just going to say what are the anomalies that you can find. And of course, that's going to be interesting because, of course, the data might have anomalies where things are wrong or where, I would be missing one line or one row. But also they could be having anomalies in terms of the metadata. So if the general, for instance, phone numbers match up to some kind of general rule. So this is what I fed to the 2 AIs. What did the general AI say? I said, okay, thank you. There are 3 random anomalies. In line 5, it found out that the standard format was different to the standard, or the format was different to the standard. It said that the address is an unusual combination of letters, and it had some kind of concept of what an address in that sort of context should look like. And it's looking at a syntactical anomaly, which is the state is lowercase. So instead of uppercase letters, you had lowercase letters. Interestingly, when I fed the same thing to the dev context, I also got very interesting stuff. It was completely different. So I got there are duplicate phone numbers, there are duplicate addresses, and some of the email domains are from weird free domains. So what you can take away from here, again, is that, of course, you could be doing some prompt engineering. You could be redoing the prompt and making sure that you really get the huge summary of everything that you're getting here, but that already shows you that you would probably have to know what you're looking for. So you would have to adapt your prompt to say, look for duplicate phone numbers, addresses, and what have you. And that, of course, already suggests that somehow you as a developer are still, or someone who's who knows what the data should look like is still needed in this process. You can't just rely on it alone. But bear in mind, I then went on to do something that AIs are really good at. And I said, okay, thank you. Now, please generate a response JSON that contains A, the line where the anomaly occurred, B, the problem, etc. I just specified that it should take the output that it had generated before and put it into a valid JSON, which it did. And that, of course, is a very interesting game changer because let's say that somehow you can tweak your prompt to make sure that you get all the anomalies that you're looking for. Of course, for instance, with Azure OpenAI, you can hook up that capability as an API, meaning no matter what your code is, no matter what your stack is, you could be just saying, okay, I'm going to be using GPT as my API. I've got some data and I'm putting it into at this point, it would be the anomaly API, and you would be getting whatever you need. If you need a JSON, perfect. If you needed more, I don't know, different structures, different properties, or an XML or what have you, you could just get it programmatically without having to do any manual programming or any manual evaluation or any data evaluation that you have to implement manually. And of course, bear in mind, the prompting and getting to this, again, was a matter of minutes. I don't need to tell you how long this would take you as a programmer to do this manually with syntax, if you will. Okay, moving on from anomalies, just checking quickly if there are any questions in the chat. If I ever find my window again. Is it here? Is it here? No. Okay, perfect. Next example, whoops, we were in anomalies. Yes, let's move on to example. Next example would be no documentation API calls. That's an interesting one. Usually what you get when you look on Reddit or if you talk to other programmers who use this a lot, they're generally in agreement that AI is pretty good if you provide them with a link to a documentation, for instance, for an API, and it would then generate code from that documentation. But let's take it one step back and let's see what does AI do when you do not provide them with documentation. So what's their inbuilt documentation that they have. My example comes from iStack, obviously. So Microsoft Graph API. Again, as I said before, this is something that is not well documented. I said to the dev AI, please give me a Microsoft Graph API request to add permissions to an existing SharePoint site. What's really cool is, first of all, it gave me this. There's hardly, if you know that endpoint, you're going to find some basic documentation on it. But if you don't know that this is the endpoint you have to use, this is going to take you hours and hours to even figure out that this is an option. And it gave me a valid script. Of course, you have to put in authorization and so on and so forth, but it's giving you everything you need to fulfill this request, which is already pretty amazing. And then importantly, I said before, most or some AIs that you use tend to, in some regards, make up stuff. They come up with stuff that doesn't exist, like with the URL that we saw before. Interestingly here, I then went on to put in a second prompt on top of that. And I said, okay, cool, thank you. But what is the Graph API call to give this specific group permissions to that SharePoint site? And without being provided the documentation, said, unfortunately, as of now, Microsoft Graph API does not directly support adding a group to SharePoint. Plus, it gave me a valid alternative how to do this. Now, this, for me personally, is really important and really awesome because I said before it would take me hours to figure out if that endpoint is something that's valid. But what's even worse is trying out an API until you figure out what it can't do. So getting reliable information for an API to tell me what it can't do and that I shouldn't be investing further time in prototyping here is a really powerful thing. And again, something that can save you spades of time. Just a quick drink break. How am I looking in terms of time? Not so bad. We might be making it, maybe. Next one of my favorite examples is what I call complex problem solving. This is a really good example. What I wanted to do here is I had a project where I wanted to create a config file that could be read, and then something could be set up with that config. And I had never done it with that specific config before, and that specifically with a JSON file. So I had, my sort of keys and values and what have you, URLs that I wanted in a config file. And I said to the general AI, please generate a valid JSON file, keeping the properties and the comments, to sort it alphabetically and adjust the property names so that they have consistent, there's a type of formatting. So for instance, camel case, because when I collected all these properties, I was all over the place in terms of how I was putting it together. And the first part, nicely done. So you can see here, I'm getting a JSON, I'm getting the U is at the end, so it's sorting it alphabetically. But you can see already immediately, great, but can you add comments in a JSON? There were comments in the original. Now, keeping in mind that I didn't know that JSON can't do comments. So the AI said, I'm sorry, but comments are not allowed in JSON format. I checked that, found out on the web, okay, that's correct. And this could have been it, right? No, it wasn't. What I did then is I went to a senior developer and I said, like, hey, I'm not so sure. Do you think this is the one and only way you can do it? And of course, the senior developer, being senior as they are, said to me, there is a way we developers work with this. And that's okay. Usually you can add the comments in the same JSON with this particular schema. So for instance, if you have app audience, then you can put in the comments straight underneath it. And the cool thing about it being that you could still have it in one file, so you wouldn't have to have some kind of mapping. Plus, it would still be sorted alphabetically, and you would see the values close to each other. And the important part is I fed this information to GPT, and it was like, oh, sure, I can adapt your config file. But of course, you can see here very much when it gets to something that's already a bit more complex, unless you know what you have to ask for, and unless you have someone or something to tell you how it goes, you will not end up with this information just from GPT alone. Again, disclaimer, things might be already much better now, 2 weeks on and so on and forth. But I'm just saying, okay, complex problem solving, there are definitely things where human interaction and the human brain is something very valuable. And of course, experience, right? So next example would be in the realm of navigating security. This is something that I have to say has improved a lot in the last couple of months, obviously down to bad publicity. So of course, you've all heard about sample scripts that were posing security issues. And the interesting thing here is I asked the general AI, write a simple sample Python script that calls a public API. So knowing that there are things that might pose a security issue. And even a general AI, as you can see here, it gave me Python script and so on, said at the end, note, this script does not include any security features such as API authentication or encryption. I think that's already pretty powerful because if you're a junior developer who knows nothing about certain aspects or about APIs or whatever, this is good stuff, right? I mean, it's giving you kind of a general direction where to go, even if you don't have that experience yet. And if you take it even further, I didn't try it with the general AI to say, write a sample Python script that calls a public API, but build 3 security problems into it. Again, we see the issue or the concept of restrictions. So this particular general AI was like, oh my God, this goes against my ethical standards, so I can't do this. Whereas if we go into the dev AI, oh yeah, sure. Here you have a script that has 3 security issues built into it. But importantly, it's putting into the comments that these are security issues and what the issues here are. So it's kind of like hoping that you are good enough to use this and not misuse this, which is very interesting. So security, definitely an interesting point when you're using dev capabilities. Just checking how many more examples I have. Last one. Ha! The last one would be one of my favorite examples as well, which is API endpoints and filtering. Remember we had before the examples where you're feeding the AI no documentation. This time we're like, okay, let's try this much cited example of we're passing on documentation for something and we want sample code. So what did I do? I went to the general API, general AI, and said, please give me a sample Python script that uses the Spotify REST API. And importantly, what I want is filter for information where we only get tracks by female artists. Okay, perfect. I got the Python script. You can see here that's the endpoint, search endpoint. Here are the query parameters, tracks, and then here, cool, we have a filter option, which is artist equals female. Only problem, not true. So even though I provided the link to the valid documentation on something that is well documented on the web, the general API just came up with something and made it up. It was not true. And interestingly, of course, the dev, and even worse, I then went to say, hey, please give me all the justification on the web where you found that this is in the documentation. And it went a step further and invented Spotify documentation links, claiming that here there is a reference for female artists. That's, of course, something that you have to take with a grain of salt because it's not as bad as in the security example, but of course, this could be taking you a lot of time to take code that simply doesn't work, look up documentation that doesn't exist, and use features that are not implemented. If we put the same thing into the dev AI, we can see that not only is the information correct, because at the end you can see here, please note that the Spotify API does not provide the gender of the artists directly, but it went a step further and said, hey, look, you're doing Python, right? Of course, you can use the general API from Spotify, but if you're using Python, there is something that the community does, which is everyone's using Spotify, which is a Python library and has so many advantages and inbuilt filtering and is so convenient and so on and forth. So it didn't go into what I said it should do, but it went one step further and made it even better. And this script actually worked. So you can see, again, it really depends also on the kind of model you're using, the context, but also your know-how and your research capabilities to see if the stuff that's being provided, which is awesome, right? It's really practical, can actually be used. So these were my examples. So in a nutshell, we're almost at the end. Please bear with me for 5 more minutes. In a nutshell, what can we say about AI Singularity in current dev contexts? Can it do machine learning in the sense of it's teaching itself, it's analyzing patterns, it's predicting the next patterns? Yes, absolutely. We saw that prediction is a big thing, creation. Can it automate repetitive tasks? Absolutely. I'm not only talking about my Power Automate example where it's creating my flow for me, but we had the anomaly or for things like URL encoding or suggesting valid JSON structures. These are little things that make up a lot of our work as developers that can be taken out of our hands completely, which free up a lot of time. So that's definitely something that is possible and works well at the moment. Can it provide code recommendations in terms of where you can improve your code or how you can optimize it? To some extent, bear in mind, it never gives you everything. Absolutely, yeah. So if you don't have the feature of or the luxury of somebody doing code reviews for you, then this is at least someone who will. Might not be perfect, but it does. And can it assist with code generation? I think you saw that in multiple examples, albeit the code is not always 100% correct, depending on how you ask. You get a lot of code and you get code that actually works. Does it replace the need for human communication? Nope, definitely not. I think we saw that as well. Does it replace the need, or can it replace humans to make ethical decisions? That's a good one. Generally, I would not recommend it. Also, remember the bias. What is the data based on? Who is it based on? Context, time period, and so on and so forth. But I think there are scenarios where, with bad management, with people who do not take decisions and who make decisions randomly, it might not be the worst thing to incorporate ethical opinions on top. But generally, as it stands, no, absolutely not. Does it understand business requirements? Maybe, if you had something that doesn't, to my, not what I know at the moment exists right now, if you had a model that you could feed with everything on your job, all information, dynamically, all the context, all the information that is not outspoken, all meta information in documents, and it would have to have the whole history. So it would always have to know past things and everything in the back. So vertical and horizontal, complete, vast information. I don't think it's possible. And I think even if you had these capabilities to scale it up like that, I don't think it could fully understand business requirements as humans or as developers do at the moment. And can it replace human creativity? Absolutely not. Whenever I say, give me everything, I'm getting 3 things and then I come up with 13 more. So absolutely not. Meaning, in a nutshell, fully autonomous AI creatures surpassing human intelligence, AI superiority, singularity, is it a thing right now? Nope, it's not. But, oh God, time is of the essence. So just in a nutshell, right? What is it? I would say at the moment, AI dev context is like an incredibly gifted junior programmer. Here are some quotes from Reddit that I really love. If you have time, take a screenshot of those. I think they're really great. The point being, why not? Why is it only a junior programmer? It's inventing code and endpoints that don't exist, that don't work. You don't get reliable web curls because they're too expensive. If you want to do that, you could be combining it with, for instance, a Google search API, which is incredibly costly, or with a Bing API, with this Bing, which is Bing. Whenever you say, give me everything you can think of, you do not have that limitless creativity. And of course, as we've seen today as well, different language models are useful for different tasks, which is something that you would have to maintain. You would have to pay this. So that's intense. And importantly, you kind of need to know the answer when you're asking, and security aspects as well. So I think there's still a lot of things that keep this from being the technical singularity. But in a nutshell, what does that mean now for you as junior developers or as novice developers or even as business managers? Here's just a couple of take-home messages that I have for you. That's the one thing I want to give you. Just don't think you're a superstar because AI gave you good content. I use a lot of AI code and a lot of things, but I think it's important to be upfront about this and to know, with all the limitations that I've shown you and all the problems, this doesn't make you as great as somebody who really has the experience. And just as a take-home message, the senior developers and architects that you work with deserve respect, credit, and care, because they are the ones who can do the things that AI can't. Also, be truthful about your AI use in development projects. I think AI can give you really useful and fresh input, but at this point, it can only enhance what you have and it cannot replace it. So I think it's fine to use AI input in projects, but I think you would have to declare it and to do so respectfully, because I think at the moment, people are just really taking all of this and saying, look how great I am, and this is not going to work because it's not that great yet. But I would definitely say to you, use AI as much as possible to learn. It's an amazing learning partner for basic concepts. So, you know, from the examples you saw, when you say, I want to use something, I haven't done it yet. And you can always go back into the prompt and you can say, I don't understand it. Or if it's providing a code, what I do all the time is like, okay, please provide sample code in a language or framework I don't know yet. But please comment in line and explain it to me like I'm a 3-year-old, you know. This is the kind of luxury that you don't have in learning with other people who can't spend this kind of time on you. So it's really amazing for learning. Always remember that AI models can inherit bias from the training data. We talked about this briefly. Always be aware. And importantly as well, consider privacy and security. I said before, there are different kinds of AIs you can access. There are some which are free, where you have to sign up. Some where you don't have to sign up at all, or some that are behind some kind of paywall or enterprise application, what have you. Since, especially for the ones which are free, but also the ones which are sort of in something embedded in something else, always be aware when you're pasting API keys or email addresses, etc. Because at the end of the day, we said we don't really know what the training data is, and we don't always know what exactly the model does. So I just would be very careful here and just take it with a bit of caution. And very important, if you have created content and ideas with AI that you're happy with, make sure you double check it. Don't just check code that's been generated into production. Don't just say this is it. Double check it with either quality research if you have the time, or with the seniors who can help you figure out if it's a thing. And lastly, advice to senior developers and IT pros here: be open-minded. We just talked about how juniors bring in fresh ideas and might use AI for learning. And that means that they can give you a fresh outlook on things that you might have disregarded in the past or never heard of. And you know what they say, we never stop learning in IT. So just don't disregard people who come to you and say AI has created this, because there still might be something that you can learn from this, or something that might be good for the project. Also, make AI the assistant they won't give you. So if you're in a really good job right now where you have a lot of responsibility, but they don't give you an assistant, then maybe figure out if they can pay for a premium AI license, for instance, a dev license, where you can go and you use it, like I showed you an example, to automate some of the generic boring tasks and make you faster, and just get some things out of the way that somebody else could be doing for you, in this case, the AI. Don't just shrug it off as a trend. I think that's really important. Like, you are the senior developers, you're the pros, right? You've seen hundreds of new, innovative, game-changing things before. But just don't shrug it off as a trend, simply because just because you don't use it doesn't mean that others won't, right? At the moment, some of the things that you can do are still affordable, and other people who are either juniors to you or on the same level as you are using those capabilities and are using them to their advantage to proceed in their jobs. So you're not immune just because you're good, and make sure that you take it seriously to some extent. Also, watch out for updates in your stack. I mean, you've seen my Power Automate example, you've seen the web development example. This is a bit of a sinister view, but for instance, with me, with Power Automate, I'm going to have to think of an exit strategy. So maybe it's going to go more into the realm of .NET or whatever, but I just seeing what it does and what it can do, it's making me aware that I definitely have to see where the journey is going, and also where my exit strategy is going. So make sure that you also do that, and that you kind of think of where will your journey go, your dev journey, if this happens to you too. Also important, foster a culture of learning and collaboration with your juniors and seniors. So make sure that your juniors aren't afraid to approach you with AI code, but make sure that you kind of have something established where you say, okay, I'm welcoming new ideas, and because I'm open-minded to them, I'm putting them into a process that I'm happy with. So if you're aware, if you're open-minded, and if you make this an option, then you can have much more control over this, rather than people coming your way and pasting AI-generated code in your production environment. You guys are the ones with impact. Sorry, my reminder, I have to be quicker. So make sure that you always address ethical implications, because you have the ears of your decision makers. People listen to you because you're senior and you're pros. So make sure that you're the ones who are advocating that, you know, everything has ethical implications here. And lastly, for your own journey, consider wider hybrid roles, sorry, and deeper domain expertise, because you've seen that some of your current tasks might vanish, right? You might not have to do everything from scratch anymore. You might not have to do everything manually anymore. So you should really consider expanding your current role and investing more in your existing domain expertise, to make sure that you have deep dive know-how at the same time as being having a broad sort of you know what I want to say, being a good repertoire. That's it, right? That's very, I think, really important to make sure that you stay relevant with hybrid roles. Yes, so I'm a little bit over time. We still have time for questions. Thank you for your attention. You can find me on LinkedIn. This is the link. And you can also contact me through this email address. And if we still have time, I'm happy to take questions.
Hi, Anna. Thank you very much for your session and talk. It was really amazing. I especially love the take-home messages, especially for the junior people. And I have to say, I really agree with everything you said. We have some time for a few questions. So I think, I mean, even though you, I think through your talk answered a lot of questions that I had, but there are some questions
All right.
that I hope you can still answer. So for example, who benefits the most from AI in development right now, from your perspective?
I think both juniors and seniors. I think seniors because they know what they're looking for and they can outsource a lot of tasks, like I said, with using it as the assistant that you're not given. But I think also people who have very, very little knowledge in some of the fields and just are at the very beginning of their development journey. And what it's like if you're new at a company, you're junior and people are using words all the time, buzzwords or technical terms that you are not familiar with. I mean, this is fantastic because you can just take them with you and you can go into some kind of interaction with an AI to figure out what it means, give you examples, create a test script, build a prototype. And that's so much better than just being left with being overwhelmed by things that you're not familiar with. So I think everyone's really benefiting from it, but also it's really, really scary for us as developers, both juniors and seniors.
Yeah, I mean, what can I also say? For example, for me, as a junior developer, it's always, I don't know, sometimes it's easier to ask AI about something that I'm not sure. Also because sometimes you're like, okay, maybe this is a question that I shouldn't ask my boss or something like that. So
exactly.
I think that's really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Next question. What are the most significant ways AI will transform the developer's role in the next 3 years? What do you think?
I'm going to go with my answer from my randomizer. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know where this journey is going to go. I'm watching everything, but I think it's always been difficult to kind of say where our trend's going to go, in the next couple of years. Then came cloud stuff, and suddenly it was like I can't do a forecast for more than half a year. And I think with AI, we're really literally like in monthly sort of things. So I'm really not happy or qualified to answer this question. That's just the truth.
In the end, I think it's always just a personal opinion because, as you said, no one really knows. Okay, next question. How is AI changing how we are coding and boosting our creativity, or do you think it's not boosting our creativity and doing the opposite?
I think it's definitely boosting creativity because it's no matter if you're a junior or senior developer, you're going away from just knowing about something to having some kind of sample script or some commented or whatever really well explained sample script for the thing that you're trying to try out. And I think it's an amazing creativity boost for me anyway, because I'm less stuck than I would have been before with things where I'm like, oh, I've always wanted to try this out, but that tutorial wasn't good enough, but there is not enough documentation, or I just simply don't know how to start. And I think that it's making huge waves in that regard, that it's just not stopping you at all. I mean, I think you still get to the point when you don't know about something, that you get to a point where maybe you can't go all the way, you can't turn it into something life-changingly productive if you're a junior. But you definitely get to stages where you're like, I have an idea and I can implement it. And I think that's very powerful, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's have one last question because we're quite there on time.
Yes, I know.
Let's see. Yeah, also for our viewers, in case you didn't have time to see the contact, please take a look again, and you can always send additional questions to Anna.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's do this one. How can we make sure AI generated code follows best practices and is secure? I mean, I know you already mentioned all of this in your talk, but maybe just like a final seize answer.
Right. I think one hope is that the models are just going to continue improving, both in terms of how they want to implement restrictions when it comes to security, as well as general recommendations on when they generate a script that has security implications. I think that's really good. But I think at the end of the day, it really depends on how, like I said, the process of using AI generated code is handled at your company. If it's a very if it's a kind of climate where you can't really do that and people are doing it anyway, then I think it has huge implications security wise. But if this is something where you incorporate it into your, I don't know, whatever Scrum meetings you have or whatever processes you have, to look at it and also learn from it and see that maybe why it's not a good idea to use certain things yet. I think that's the other step that's definitely needed. But I definitely think that the journey is going to continue in the models themselves, that they're going to become, at least in the very basic scripts that we have, more secure. But I think as they're going to become more complex and going to be solving more complex things, it's going to be a huge issue in the future and a huge task if you're looking for a new job to kind of look at how secure AI generated code is, especially dynamically generated code, or and how it's impacting the security of your entire architecture. I think it's gonna be a big one, and one that can't be replaced by AI just yet.
Yeah, definitely. I think transparency is also the key in all of this. That would be our time for today, Anna. Thank you very much for your talk. It was really insightful. And yeah, thank you for your time, and I wish you a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and I wish you all wonderful days and wonderful careers. Thank you very much.
You too. Okay, that was Anna with her great talk, but today we have another one left, and I think this one is really great to kind of close our day. And the title of the next talk is Multilingual NLP Pipeline Up and Running from Scratch. Joining me on the stage is Katerina. She's a developer at Voltec. Hello.
Hi there, hope you can hear and see me right. It's such a high bar now standard. Thank you for such a kind words. And especially I'm extremely happy to close up today's sessions with this topic that is actually like quite big and quite interesting for me, especially because I'm the part of the countries where English is not the base language. So it's where the NLP becomes much more interesting because there is no such tools, and that's actually where the point when you start to be creative. So let's maybe start first of all with a problem statement, because basically whenever you're doing something, if there is now problem that you are solving, it actually doesn't make sense. So just like throw back in time why I created this presentation, why I'm here to tell all of this to you. It's because when I started my master degree and I decided to proceed this in computer science, I wanted to create some natural language processing pipelines, especially for my group of languages, for Slavic languages. And I realized that there is a lot of information for how NLP done in terms of English. There's a lot of information how to train, maybe some stuff. There is a little bit less information about how actually NLP is integrated into end application. It's not this much, to be honest, surprisingly. And then in the end, it's almost nothing about best practices for CI/CD and how actually implement them. So there is not quite good guideline from end to end how to integrate your NLP into applications, and that's basically what we're gonna do for the next 45 minutes. I will sum up everything that I came up with during my master's degree discovery and everything that I think would be useful for you. Also, in this presentation, you will see some QR codes. Please feel free to scan them because there is a reference on quite interesting resources that was, unfortunately, I cannot include them all in the presentation because we are like limited on the time, but it's quite interesting still. So hope you will enjoy and roll back, please, because we are starting our journey. And of course, like a little bit maybe about me, because I already getting to know you. It would be nice if you are also knowing me, like how it works. My background, I started as a Java developer with strong DevOps background. Also, I was part of firefighter team within my company. So whenever there was some issue with deadlines, maybe issues with infrastructure, and etc., I was there to help my folks. And that's why actually part of my presentation is focused on exactly DevOps and especially MLOps, because it's basically what you actually need when you're starting to use your model. Because it's nice when it's on your local PC, it's nice when it's your pet project, but if you wanted to start the real thing, you need to deploy it somewhere. So just to sum up our agenda, we will start with NLP generals, like challenges, how typical NLP pipeline works, and maybe some answers that you want to know beforehand when you are starting with your NLP pipelines integrations. Second part is actually multilinguality and what's the fuss about it, and why it's such a big thing, what is such a big challenge, what to do with it. And the last but not least 2 points is actually about constructing the pipeline, what concepts that I recommend to use for you as a starters, and of course the CI/CD and hosting your model. It would be like our main constraints today. And first of all, as this presentation is partially intermediate level, I assume that you know something already about NLP, and here it will be just brief slide to keep us all on the same page. So whenever we call NLP, NLP based on processing the human understandable language, and today I plan to focus on texts because there is also some branches like text to speech and generation between text and images. Today we are not talking unfortunately about this. Today we're talking about pure text communication, pure text modification, etc. And while NLP is like quite maybe a big topic and it sounds as all the same, but honestly NLP could be such different, because on this slide, for example, you see it's actually only topics that is applied when you're doing just simple text modification, starting from sentiment analysis and ending with summarization of the text, maybe some topic modeling from a text and text to text generation. It's actually kind of big deals. It completely different classifiers, completely different approaches and algorithms. So when you start with NLP, you should remember that it's quite a big topic and you need to focus on something if you want to have a result right away. So if you are greedy like me, greedy for result, greedy for some real implementations, you need to choose a topic and focus on it. Because if you want to, like in your application, integrate, for example, few different big tasks from NLP, for example, like sentiment analysis and topic extraction, it would be not this easy because you already need 2 different models, 2 different algorithms to proceed with. And it's training and CI/CD expenses, even hosting expenses would be much more higher. So whenever you are starting with models, please keep attention to making your scope as close as possible, because whenever your model will like orient on few different areas, it would be much more expensive to suppress. And When I'm talking also about pipelines, let's maybe also align with my favorite Yoda on how the typical natural language processing pipeline look like. And while I was talking about how difficult, how complex it is, it's basically always 3 steps. Like 3 steps that you can divide. First of all, it's like pre-processing of data. This actually, I think, maybe one of the most important of things beforehand of everything, because a lot of people think like, hey, the most important part is feature extraction, where we actually get our real information, where we get our vectors, our weights, our tokens, and etc., etc. But I think in the main point, pre-processing is the most like expensive and most interesting part, because here you're actually preparing your data. You're removing stop words, you are checking up the stemming, you are doing your name equity recognition, and etc. So everything depends on this first step, how good you will do your pre-processing and how nice your data will be formatted in the end. Also, like one of the biggest challenges of NLP is that our data is completely misformatted, because oftenly our informations and data sets are used from Twitter or some other social media networks. For me, it was Telegram. Maybe some of you familiar with it. And basically, everybody writes there whenever they want and however they want. And all the slang stuff, all the emojis, all the different type of formatting. Even sometimes you need to merge your data set, because NLP is quite expensive in terms of amount of data. So like data sets for 500k of messages is nothing in NLP. So usually you need to have a few sources that you need to align somehow, normalize, and etc. So pre-processing is actually quite a big deal, as we now all know and agree. For example, for feature extraction, as I said, it's actually when we have our messages transmitted into the vectors, basically the key features. Sometimes it can be frequencies, it can be also the coefficient for the semantic analysis, and etc. etc. So basically, it's when our words become numbers that model will understand. And last and not least, it's actually a step of modeling. And when you start to train your model, when you compile your model in the end to actually use it whenever you want. And of course, it's like alignment on coefficients if it's some advanced trend. But basically, like these 3 steps usually presented in NLP whenever you start with it. So actually, what we also want to do whenever we do NLP is a question of multilinguality, and basically how this problem came to our lives, how it's actually arranged. Multilinguality hides where we don't expect it, to be honest, because if you want to analyze texts, and you want to analyze text not dependent on the environment of the text, it's always multilinguality will come to place, because once again we're using a lot of slangs now. Our languages is quite dirty in terms of using words from English and other languages. So it's like high problem in our common world, that whenever you start to do some real life messages analysis, you face somehow with multilinguality. It's always under the corner, and you always need to deal with it somehow. Maybe ignore it, maybe just deny it, or etc. But somehow you need to live with it. Like slang is the biggest part of multilinguality. Also some words that we use from English language, for example, or from other languages, and we will see next what actually happens. Yeah, now you see this big title with multilinguality and multilinguality, and we move into this big topic and what it actually means in our terms. So basically, once I was looking into all the elements for multilinguality, for me it was maybe a bit spoiler. Like, let's go back for a few seconds. So why actually it was for me while faced with multilinguality? It's because for my countries we use Slavic languages, and Slavic languages are quite similar with each other. So basically we can understand the languages between us. And oftenly we use different languages in the same chat. For example, in my case, there was a chat chats where was hundreds and tons of messages where people was writing in Ukrainian, in Russian, in Polish, and we need to align somehow because we basically understand each other, but I wanted to make analysis, for example. And actually this question brings like high value because all these chats, all these messages could be like transliterated to actual customer analysis. So in Ukraine, for example, it's actually a big deal when you need to do a customer analysis and customer review analysis. You always need to deal with Ukrainian language, with Russian language, and even sometimes a bit of Polish language in the comments. So basically, you don't want to train a few models, for example, and you don't want to like each time determine what language it was, and etc. etc. It would be really nice to have some models that could treat the languages as equally, especially because of the huge similarity between them. And yeah, now we to my favorite slide. I really like this toxic cat approach because basically it was also my question when I started with all these multilinguality problems. Like, why can't we just translate it all in English? Because in English there is a lot of tools, basically a lot of approaches is oriented on the English language, and it's historically like that. The English language was most representative under the NLP tasks. And stop words dictionaries are awesome for English language. Algorithms work exactly with the semantic and with the way that English language sentences are built. So basically NLP is perfect for English. Why we can just translate? And then I made research and I find out that, well, basically sometimes that's what actually people do. And that's one of the reasons why some of translations and some of the reviews analysis basically sucks, because the level actually some languages doesn't meant to be translated in English because we have special semantic, we have some untranslatable stuff. So basically it's not the best solution to translate everything in English and deal with it, but I mean, like, it's one of the possible ones. If you are looking for easy approach for your pet projects that you don't plan to like deep dive into multilinguality and etc., you can just pre-use some translation model and it will be fine. So yes, the problem is still presented, and why actually you basically can't translate everything to English, because it's actually beats up accuracy a lot, because like in general when you're using like translations and then analysis on English text, it's up to 20% lower accuracy, and it's a huge number. So it's kind of unacceptable for some commerce use. For pet project, it's, I mean, like, it could be all right, but what's the fun? It is knowing that you can do 20% better and just living it itself. But if you need something quick, yes, such approaches are like common. You even can use already predefined models. Please scan this QR code. There is two also quite interesting articles on these topics, how actually like translation works and how people integrate in this translating model. But we are having fun today, so I don't recommend translating everything to English, because it's easy way, and easy way it's not always fun. And also additional question, I mean, like, sometimes it's good to translate to English if English was your main language in terms of translation. For example, if your task, if you are from some area where English is one of the languages that you actually plan to use, it's all right. I mean, like, you can use it. But for example, for cases with such languages like Slavic, or for example like Portuguese or French, it's like, if you don't plan to talk in English in the chat that you analyze, there is no point to actually introduce it. So it's kind of over complexity. You are killing one goose, but you are making hundreds of another, like this Ghidra, these mythical monsters of our dreams. So please don't do so if you don't plan to actually integrate English into your models. Don't translate it all to English. And I already actually a bit uncovered the mystery why multilinguality in English not always the best approach. So basically, when I talk about multilinguality, you say like, hey, it's probably this picture, because we have so many languages, everyone talks differently. But multilinguality can be a bit hidden, because what actually also multilinguality means is some cases like English that is spoken in different parts of the world. It's like main language in different parts of the world, and it's different English. It's not the same English, especially in sometimes in grammar, in the way people use the words, some specific dialects. So it's never the same English, and you still need to deal with it. Even the semantic and grammar could be different. Even the way you write your words could be different. The same thing for Portuguese, a language that, for example, Brazil Portuguese and Portuguese, it's quite huge difference. And whenever especially I heard few stories about my friends that was moving from Brazil to actually Portugal and realizing that it's completely new language that need to learn. So when you're talking about multilinguality, please keep in mind that even the same language could still be such different that you need different models to deal with it. And today our presentation is mainly focused on this moment, as in Slavic languages, for example, when these languages are so close to each other that it seems that it's one, but it's not. So your model also needs to understand it. And it's actually quite common case. You see, it's like for Spanish and for French, it's always like kind of the same thing. So let's move maybe further. And the big question arises then, what are we supposed to do with this new information that our beloved English is not always the same English, and the Slavic languages are so close to each other, it's sometimes difficult to understand which one is which. What you can do? The answer is generalize and conquer. To the main point to solve such problems is actually create one model that will treat our languages as one. So you need to generalize your code enough and generalize your vectors enough so it could be treated as the same language. Sounds easy, but it's not. But quite well, it's actually quite naive approach still. Never mind, it uses a lot of complex algorithms and amplification. Still, it's a naive approach because there is now much more advanced stuff like transformers and etc. etc. But today, for starters, let's just ignore this topic for now and focus on naive stuff such as stemming, back of words model, and of course similarity index. This is concept quite known, but still you can get a huge benefit of them even in such a consuming and difficult task. So about multilingual pipelines, how multilingual pipelines could look like. First of all, of course, it's import, where we import in all our required information from different sources, but we are like ignoring it for now because it's not topic of our conversation today. Behalf, it could be also much more interesting. Also, second point is data normalization, noise removal, stop words cleanup, and fixing formatting. And it's actually where the things become more interesting because you see like, well, pre-processing is already like quite common, so I can do like whenever I want. For example, like if I want to analyze Ukrainian, Russian, and Polish in one moment, I will just use the pre-processing pipeline for Russian or for Ukrainian. It will be fine. No, it won't be fine. You need to here also do some interesting stuff like combining stop words dictionaries, also generalizing the alphabets because Russian and Ukrainian lose Cyrillic and Polish actually lose Latin. So you need to also count on these things. And but the simplest thing you can do is actually merging the stop words dictionary, and you will already have much more higher accuracy results in the end. The second step is actually when we are trying to build our back of words model, we can also do TF IDF analysis. For example, if you want to do some semantic analysis stuff, and it's where the tokenization and frequency dictionaries are built, and where our back of words model is actually used. On this moment, you need to understand that back of words model is quite naive approach that will just count amount of words between your documents without the context, and it's actually maybe not this good approach. But what you can do to improve it, you can add the stemmatization. Basically, stemmatization, we can talk about it a bit later, but stemmatization is when you moving your words to the root form, And in the end, you will have a dictionary, not only the back of words model for Ukrainian or for Russian, but you will have complete dictionary with two languages where the root form are the same. Also, you can increase the results of such a back of words model, such as index of um, similarity. It's when you are calculating some words that are a bit different in different languages, but still have the same meaning, and you count them as one. It's quite complex algorithm, but still it can improve your results in at least 15% of accuracy. So the first step, of course, is training. And here, to be honest, I want to today go with easy approach and use NLTK classifiers that was presented by sklearn, because these classifiers is quite common. You can use them whenever you want. And actually, we doesn't care this much about classifiers, because on the moment of the step 4, we already have our vectors and we already operate with languages. Not with languages, but rather with the numbers. So the main point where we solving multilinguality is on steps 2 and 3. The fifth step is basically the step where we drink champagne and doing nothing, because it's actually not doing nothing, but we enjoying our results and we checking up the visualizations. So, as I said, how the stemming works in real life. Here you can see example quite simple for English. In Ukrainian and in Russian, it's quite more interesting, but unfortunately, I can't show you because I wanted you all to understand what's actually happening. So, what stemming do? Stemming removes suffix from the end and puts the word into the base form and use the root as the actual word. Is it good or bad? There is a lot of discussions on it, because there is a term like overstemming, when you cut off basically parts that you don't want to cut off. But still, the stemming is naive approach that works really good with a lot of languages. That's why it's still presented, still widely used, and etc. So that's what happened on a stemming place. There is a few predefined stemming algorithms that are available, for example, through the sklearn and etc. Also, if you want something more advanced, you can build it up with UK Steminizer. It also will be in the end for the all examples and all the required resources. You can scan it in the end, but basically that's all the stemming does. Sounds simple, but still it has huge impact on the our end result. Next step is like, now feeling, as I said, of really simple things that will bring our huge value in the end. Because now I wanted to also show you back of words model. And back of words model, what basically it means, it counts per our message. For example, let's imagine we get some chat and we have some messages in it. So what BOV will do, it will go through all these messages, tokenize them, and will grab the amount of words, and we'll count for each one, create a dictionary with its frequency. What is more interesting about BOV is that it could be used with stemmanization, and if you using like BOV on a data set that was already stemmanized, you already have a better result, because like for example for Ukrainian and English, not for Ukrainian English, for Ukrainian and Russian, for example, or for American English and for British English, you have some words that have the same root but still have the different ending. And now on this BOV, they will be counted as the same word. So the result in the topic classification, for example, will be quite much more higher. And the last but not least is how actually works index of similarity. Index of similarity is quite a big topic, and here unfortunately I still needed to leave my Slavic examples. Why? Because in Slavic way it's extremely like obvious what it's actually doing. So in the start, you have two messages, one in Russian, one in Ukrainian. And then when you are splitting up in the topic, you have two words, as you see here, they are extremely similar in the way, and they're extremely similar in the root extraction. So you see, like, the root is like basically differs in one letter, and your index of similarity will be counted by the Dirichlet difference between these two words. And in the end, you will find out that this difference is only one character. So in the end, what will happen with this index of similarity, you will increase the amount of frequencies for one word for 2, and next one for 1. So basically, it means that you will count some words more often than others. And in this way, you can also increase quality, because your topic identification will work better, because now you count in 2 languages for the same topic, not one. Of course, this approach also has own drawbacks, because with this overstemming that I already told you, sometimes the part that got cut off doesn't work. That's why you need to be careful with it, and like preferable value for index of similarity is actually 1 or the maximum 2, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. For some more difficult approaches, for example, like for words flat and apartment in English and British English in American English, there is also vocabularies that helps up with it. So it's also one more way. Instead of building your own index of similarity, you can also use predefined ones and check up on them. Usually when you're using dictionaries, the complexity wouldn't be like raised as much, because like time to assess the entity by the name there is actually all from 1. So it's actually a really good number. So in the end, to summarize, what the multilingual NLP pipeline would be different from just general NLP, we can say that it's like 3 main approaches. First of all, it's demonization, that we cut in our words to the root form and we create in one language from multiple, basically preparing our big dictionary where the few languages would be treated as one by the root form. And not solving all our problems, but quite some. Second point, it's actually when you build in a frequency dictionary based on already normalized form, not in general like a normal word itself, but rather on already stemmanized text, so it would be having higher topic count and etc. And BOV also should be based on the frequencies for words that is having common root, and even more better to have the index of similarity turned on, added there, or as alternative, you also can use some dictionaries that also already predefined. For English, there is quite good dictionaries. British and American English also quite covered, but for some languages like Russian and Ukrainian, they are not, unfortunately. So that's why you need to build your own based on what I just showed you. Also, third point, what you need to know too, it's our classifier that was defined by NLTK is trained on a vector that was in stemmed form and using the frequency generator and using our dictionaries all in one. So basically, we train our data on root forms, but analyze our end data in not root forms. It's maybe a bit confusing. Let me rephrase it once again. So we are training our data on a root form words, but when we actually using real prediction model, we are putting the normal words in without additional stemmanization. And of course, for us, basically what I already told you, it's a dictionary of similarities that you can preload or build by your own. When you build it by your own, it's actually quite big, but still and quite complex thing to do to start training, but still it improves results, so we can do this sacrifice for now. Basic thought that you need to remember from the slide: what's cool about multilingual NLP, what's different from general NLP, it's stemming and bow model. So that's exactly what you need to know about that. A little bit about result, because I'm talking a lot about how much percentage is increasing and etc etc, and I don't want to you think that I'm just talking some numbers out of my head. There is actual research, actual results, and actual building ups. You can see that here is 3 different classifiers: native bias, max classifier, decision tree classifier, and different occurrences for Ukrainian language, Russian language, and them in separate. And you see that the model working for combined text in 2 languages quite well, almost 90% of accuracy, and it's quite high number. Here a bit about why there is 3 different classifiers. It's because it depends on the task that you want to do. You also might want some different stuff, because for example, name bias certifiers classifier is quite simple one, but it's most effective when you need just topics, or when you need important tokens from the word. The current task that was actually examined, it was basically about identification of the author of the message by the excluding some measuring features from different authors. And it all works quite well, especially with native buyers, because it works with context of the messages and not ignoring it. For example, decision tree, it's quite basic and quite simple approach that not work here, because of its semantic structure under the hood. So basically, as you see, the result and improvement is quite huge. And maybe we now moving to one more different topic, because now I was talking all about implementation theory and etc. But theory itself never good, and you always, when you're creating something, you expect to use it on some point, and then where actually the question becomes to your mind, how to use your model into the application. And there is our favorite stop cadre from Matrix: embed or not embed your model into your application. What I mean by that, there is in general 2 huge branches of how you should integrate your NLP model into the application. First approach is when your model is deployed within your APIs together. It's quite common, for example, for approach where you use Fast API. But in the end, it's basically like monolithic thing when you where you combine your embedded model into the same computer engine, for example, in Google Cloud, and your API talks with the model by itself. But alternative way is when you actually create an API for your model, and you using it, like for example, within a Docker container, also deployed on, for example, GKE for Google, or also as alternative you can deploy it for serverless, but without Docker, of course. It's also also parsable approach that you can do. And basically there is a lot of discussions around one approach better than another. To be honest, I think they not quite the same, but still the result would be nice. It depends on what ecosystem you have already on your project, what you are planning to use it. Because, for example, if you plan to use serverless is a less effort that you can do. You need to remember that actually computing might be a bit expensive, and when you measure amount of calls for actual API, you will still need to keep in mind how often you will do this call. So serverless will be going good with your model only when you already have compiled model and you don't plan to train it on the server, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. It completely breaks the serverless approach. Secondly, what you need to remember is that amounts of call would be measured, so it's good when you have really small models that will answer some basic questions and etc. And yes, that's why why you may want to use serverless. Otherwise, if you wanted to do real nice models that will maybe even retrain itself from time to time, if you wanted to do parallelism of the internal processes for the model, you definitely need to think about virtual machines and self-hosting, also maybe even some additional Kubernetes stuff, and adding there, for example, the pod orchestration and even the scalability on the go. So that's actually quite big topic. With embedded topics, it's you shouldn't expect it to be like commerce approach. It's rather approach for basically pet projects. Why? Because it will be quite expensive. It would be a lot of calls to the model and application working together. So when you are hosting such, it would be memory and it would be also amount of calls. So I mean, like embedded. As my opinion, you should use only when you are doing your pet project together. So also about tooling a bit, what you can use when you started to implement in your NLP application. First of all, like for me, I made the big decision to use Python still. While because multilinguality already brings you a lot of issues when you need to think about alternative approaches, and it's easier and much more convenient to use Python because there is like huge ecosystem for it in the end. Also, as a backend framework, I suggest you to use one of the Dash Fast API or Flask. And if you want some nice dashboards in the end, preferable is Dash, because Dash is quite easily integrated with Plotly. It's extremely simple in use. So if you want some quick projects that you can accomplish, for example, for one evening at least, it should be Dash with Plotly. So it's like most convenient and easy way to create a dashboard for the NLP visualization. And the last but not least, it's NLTK. It's a Scalorn library that you may use. There is a bunch of predefined classifiers. The classifiers that I already shown you, it's actually the classifiers that are available through NLTK. And it's quite convenient because most of the algorithms that NLTK provide is actually language independent, because it expects you to bring to the input the metrics of values, metrics of the vectors or something like that. And yeah, it's quite nice because you don't rely on internal mechanisms and have full control over how you actually build your metrics in the first place. And here you may see the example of how the deployment may look like. Here you can have an awesome article, QR code for one of my favorite resources when it comes to the MLOps and thinking about how the application could rely on. Here you can see like one of the most difficult approaches how to do the model, but one of the most reliable and best for the scaling, because for you, this architecture would be seamless to integrate, because you need to think about DNS, you need to think about load balancing and etc. But in the end, it will bring the best result, because here with such infrastructure, you can still have full control over processing. You can divide the ML task between compute engines and etc. So this way, it's extremely convenient when you are starting to integrate, for example, with models that will be pre-trained a few times. So recommended if you plan to retrain your model on the base of data. It was my case. So for me, my architecture look right now like that, because each time when user sends me new dataset or refers me new dataset through the internal storage, I will need to retrain my model, and Compute Engine is the best for it. Not quite cheap, but still working fine and perfectly. Alternative way how you can do some deployments, it's also like here Kubernetes. Why it's good? Because it's you not rely on a cloud actually, and you can easily migrate from one cloud to another, and it's awesome thing to do. Kubernetes, I kindly recommend you to look into this topic. Also in the end, there would be some resources listed in my GitHub repository, which one you may use, how it looks like, and etc. Code for configuration also will be available in the end. I'm sorry. Here is example for Kubeflow. Quite convenient way to integrate your model because you don't need to think about how your pods are managed. You can add the scalability on a go and have much more control over elements. And especially what's nice, what I already mentioned, you are completely not dependent on a cloud provider, and it's maybe really nice because when you have your application running in Docker, whatever it runs, it's always okay. So to look into Docker, highly recommended when you're starting with your APIs for NLP pipeline. One more big question that you can also look in, it's CI/CD for your model, and it's topic that is basically never well mentioned when I was looking for it, because usually people who do NLP for commercial use are quite closed, and the blogs is difficult to reach out, or they are not quite popular. Also topic about CI/CD for pet projects oftenly not this much highlighted, because whenever we want to do our pet project, we usually want to do fast and go. So here is example how actually ML ops pipeline may look like for you, for example, your GitHub runners and etc. So between the CI and CD, of course, you now have also possibility to add the moment of continuous training. This again, this variant is for more commercial use, because when it's your pet project, it's not always convenient to retrain your model in the runners. It will be expensive enough, but still, it's the best approach to still have your model up to date and with the latest data, with the latest update, because whenever you are doing some improval actually on the architecture of the model, for example, locally, you still need to republish it to the container of model registry. And that's why you need to have a place where the model would be retrained with new values and new algorithms and approach. Please feel free to scan this QR code. It's quite awesome article that explains one by one what you can do and how it should look like. Also, please take a note that for commercial use, testing also would be fine and would be nice. For ML, it's not always easy to write them, but there is quite a lot of frameworks that may help you. And in this article, it's also listed. So here is a QR code for actually my full code example that I did. It's a pet project, so it's not for commercial use, and not all best practices are in here. For example, test is not covered, unfortunately, but on some point of time, I plan to integrate it for you. But what I wanted to show you also, it's actually example on how application with Dash may look like for your NLP with multilingual NLP. Our data set is about, I think, for training was quite small, so it was 4 GB, but still results is quite nice. Languages was created by hand because we needed to have almost the same amount of different languages represented into the chat. And in the end, what we managed to achieve is to build actually the model that outrights user by messages and by the outer style, by defining the features of the users that is presented. So basically, whenever you want, you can increase the amount of important features for different users, and it will be convenient and proven that the user who are writing the message is actually the owner of the message. Let's quickly look maybe a bit into the code if we have time. I think we still have a few moments. If somebody wants some more answers on how actually it's built, we can answer this on the QA session. But basically, this application is quite small, quite easy. It consists of the four basic components. First of all, is of course app server on Dash, extremely convenient and easy, because Dash is basically allowing you to do the same thing as React, but maybe a bit quicker because it's Python. Second part is pre-processing, because we have a lot of data, different format, and we need to arrange them. And last but not least is actually the component where all all our methods and all our NLP algorithms is convenient here. So, for example, building the actual engram frequency, also adding some UI tokenizer and etc., where we computing actually Ukrainian and Russian language together. Also, what is maybe I wanted to show you everything on highlight. Also here Docker file, and you can see how simple actually it is. Basically nothing complex. You just have here your Python version all uploaded. Here you have all your libraries installed, and in the end you're exposing the port basically that will be used for the your server. So it's like it's not rocket science. If you're afraid to start you looking into Docker and containerize your NLP model only because you think it's complex, it's just believe me, it's not, and it will save you a lot of time and make your application much more easier and in deploying and etc. About the ML workflow, what we can do here, I also prepared extremely simple, like first look what you can do. First of all, it's actually building, but for now, for me, it's only building because test is not covered, unfortunately. But here, for example, also I'm installing the Python dependencies on the runner. In the end, we have our Docker build and publishing to the Docker registry. About Docker registry, you can use one of open source, or you can use, for example, for commerce use Harbor. It's quite convenient. So I mean, like nothing much more difficult. So here you see already publishing to the image Docker registry, and that's basically it. It's the moment where your model is already published to Docker registry, and from which you can easily pull it to any of the clouds and etc. So your next step would be configuring something like, for example, Argo CD, or even more easy to add in the publishing step where you put your containers through GKE on Google Cloud. So I think our time is like close to the end. If you have some additional questions, I will be extremely happy to answer them. And if you want to if you have a question, but unfortunately won't be able to ask it today or now, there is my 2 messengers where you can easily find me, write me and pin me, and I will be happy to answer all of them. So yeah, thank you very much for your attention. Hope you enjoyed this presentation.
Katerina, it was really interesting, and I think you really offered a great step-by-step solution on how to actually build a multi-language pipeline. Really interesting, and we do have some questions for you. We don't have much time, but I think we can answer a few of the questions. One that's really interesting for me is what methods do you use for slang processing, actually?
For slang processing, I'm using the, first of all, dictionaries. It was extremely naive approach and still needs to be overdone a lot. But additionally, there is a pipeline that was introduced by my colleague for processing for UK slang. Not UK as UK English British slang, but Ukrainian slang, and it's separate pipelines that could be integrated in pre-processing, and it's also in the repositories that I shown in the first place. But I mean, like, if you want to look at it deeper, it's a huge topic. But I mean, like, it's on a moment of pre-processing, basically dictionaries and this additional tool for UK slang. Basically not developed by me, unfortunately.
Yeah, but the main idea is that the different dictionaries are then added to
Yes.
the
Yes.
pre-processing. Mhm. Another interesting question is, do you have any tips for debugging localization issues?
Oof. I mean, like debugging localization issues. To be honest, it's a tricky question because when you are talking about training, or you talking actually about I think like some cloud deployment or localization issues, like it's a huge topic, you see.
Yeah.
So it depends. But for example, if you wanted to debug your training process, there is loggers that could be extended also in NLTK. You can add a logger by itself. If there is some localization an issue on the moment of application already, there also should be set it up as a monitoring system, as I showed on a slide before. So it's most convenient way, because otherwise you can even add a tracing ID to each error message that would be overloaded to the queue, and then developer will be able to easily manage them. So I mean, like Google actually provide extremely nice solution for error reporting and etc. But if you're starting to look into it, it's definitely, I don't recommend to set up it for pet project. It's only e-commerce use, because first of all, it's cost. Secondly, effort to integrate it.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And yeah, as you said, it's really a big topic, so it's not easy to just answer it in like a minute. Another question is in the same kind of background, I would suppose, is do you have any tips for optimizing the model interference speed?
To be honest, I think I'm thinking about my use cases. Don't have much in background about exactly optimizing, because usually what I do, I follow the guidelines for example, Kubeflow, because they have a lot of predefined configurations, for example, like scalability and a lot of limits and etc. So I'm usually a fan of the most simple solution, never configured it. For example, I know that there is a people who configure speeding limits and etc. on the level of container itself, not with Kubernetes, for example, but never saw it in real life and how it works, because usually I think it's a quite commerce code and people hiding it from us.
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah, let's have then one final question. What are the differences between using transformer-based models like BERT and versus the traditional methods for multilingual NLP tasks?
Basically in everything, and it depends what you mean by traditional. But for example, like what I showed you today is just games of children, comparing to the actual like transformers for BART, for example, and etc. Why? Because like transformers and what they use under the hood, it's having much more steps. This one is pretty basic because it's just one classifier, one predefined algorithm for analysis, and in the middle you have BOV. It's extremely simple. But when we're talking about transformers, there is calculations, there is basically much more amount of data that you need to use in the first place, and etc. So it's easier to say what is common between them than what is different.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, for anyone that has any additional questions for Katerina, you shared your contact details, and as you said, they can feel free to contact you with any additional questions, or actually also use your example that you have presented today. Thank you very much, Katerina, for your time and for your really insightful presentation today. And yeah, I wish you a great day today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure for me too. Yeah, hope I saved someone a few days of research and at least a year of implementing with this. Thank you very much.
I'm sure you did. Thank you. Okay, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in today. I hope you really learned something new, had fun, and also, got some new insightful information. From my side, I want to remind you once again of our World Congress happening in July, to be exact, from 17th to 19th July in Berlin. So yeah, please, if you're interested and if you'd like to come see us in Berlin, visit our site worldcongress.dev. And yeah, when it comes to live days, our next one is actually just in a few days on June 4th. It is about front-end performance, and yeah, I don't think I will be hosting then, but yeah, please join us, and yeah, I wish you all a great day today. See you next time.